Remember the times when children are young and you want to take a journey and tell them where you're going. They've been there. 5 minutes. Have we reached?
Yeah, it's interesting because my 4-year-old son says, yesterday. And I said, actually, that didn't happen yesterday. He says, yesterday. It's the other yesterday. You're thinking about the yesterday. It's the other yesterday and the yesterday before that.
Actually, it's the term, time as you understand it is not the way young children understand it. No. When you say yesterday, essentially, he's referring to the past.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the other yesterday is a time gone by, and you're
even last year is
yesterday. Yeah.
And now doesn't mean immediately.
Means present continuous.
So now could now be the real yesterday.
Welcome to the show, everybody, and we're glad that you are well and you've joined us, and we hope that you are really well. So today we'll have a number of conversations. We need to discuss this COVID story, okay? And from the angle of vaccination. So there's vaccination that's being rolled out all over the world. There are countries that have more vaccines than people. Well, okay, no. There are countries that are doing very well in terms of the vaccination drive. There are countries that are not doing so well. There are countries that are not even aware of what they're going to do in terms of vaccination drives, especially countries in Africa. Thank God COVID is doing what it's doing in Africa as compared to what COVID is doing in other parts of the world. Because can you imagine the kind of vaccination rollout if COVID was as devastating in Africa as it is in the West? And you're talking about vaccination and the way the governments are, doing in terms of accessing vaccine. So today we want to talk about the democratization of this vaccination drive and the politics surrounding it. We'll have a number of guests to join us. Among them will be Dr. Mercy Korir, our friend guest host. She'll be joining us. And then also we will ask one of the questions from one of our guests who will be joining us, who is the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to Kenya. He'll be here. We'll talk about many other things, what the Israeli government is doing in terms of partnership with Kenya in the agriculture sector, in security. And now we'll also seek to understand Israel is doing quite well in terms of vaccination. What is it that they're doing?
Well, I mean, in terms of making sure that everybody around the country has it. We'll look at those details as we look at coronavirus numbers around the world. So, I mean, we've seen some stories come out that, they've looked at a high case count in the country. They've looked at some deaths, but they've done several things to make sure that they sort this out. There's also the talk of how they thought about giving the Palestinians the vaccine that they've been using or not. And the United Nations has been a little bit annoyed with them in terms of how they've handled that. So there's quite a lot going on. They're in a lockdown in Jerusalem for some time. There's certain things going on there. But, I mean, if you want me to go into COVID-19 now, Eric, I will. Okay, so let's look at the numbers around the world, and we'll come back and look at Israel just a little bit. So now we're at 100,822,401 cases around the world, 2.1 million deaths so far. And 72, almost 73 million people having recovered from COVID-19. All right, let's look at some of the countries, of course, still hardest hit, and those who are now rolling out continuous stringent measures when it comes to protection, and then also when it comes to vaccinations, what they're hoping to do. There's a lot of talk around it and what certain countries are doing. The United States now with 26 million cases, having recorded yesterday. Again, considerably high numbers compared. So 148,265 new cases in the United States with 4,045 deaths, unfortunately. They are looking at making sure that the vaccine is available across the continental United States. It is a challenge for them in terms of time. Yesterday we looked at, what Pfizer is trying to do to make sure that they're producing as many as they can, hoping that they do 7.5 million doses per week. That's what's going to be required for them to hit the 100 million doses that they wanted to by the end of March. So it's a challenge for them, but We're looking at top pharmacists talking about the challenge of making it available across pharmacies. What they're trying to do is make sure that you can walk into a pharmacy and get the vaccine. Walk into the lowest level health facility and get the vaccine. So they're working on this as well. The UK, of course, still continues to work with this, and they're also talking about challenges in getting the vaccine to everybody. We saw Vice President of the United States yesterday, Kamala Harris, getting her vaccine and encouraging people that it is safe, it is easy, it is quick. She got her second vaccine yesterday and said, vaccination rather, yesterday, and said, look, everybody needs to go out and do this thing. We also know that there's still some people who are saying that there is a ploy here and that the vaccinations are not safe, or that the vaccines are not safe. So there's this whole campaign of communication encouraging people to go out and get it because it would essentially save lives.
So has the Biden administration rolled out the federal management of the vaccination drive?
Not yet.
They're saying they want to make sure that it's run from a central point.
Yes.
And they take the vaccines across the country.
So
Have they?
So now what they're doing today is the 27th, yes.
Yeah.
So today being the 27th is when they're supposed to make this announcement in terms of how it's supposed to work across the federal system, where it will be available, who then would be responsible for making sure. So they have that team of experts who is working on that, and they said that they would make this announcement today so that everybody basically knows what they're doing. This is in line in now what we saw when they said they have challenges in making sure then, because according to this team, the way to have it is that across the federal system, all states in all health facilities would have a minimum number in terms of doses of the vaccine. That's the challenge that they're working with. But they're going to make that announcement today, and then with the announcement have the rollout. So let's see how that works.
Okay.
Okay. If we can look briefly then at Israel and what has been happening in Israel over the last a few months with corona. If we look at the numbers that they have, 613,578 cases of COVID so far. This is in a population of about 9 million people. If we look at the cases that they recorded as of yesterday, they did have some problems at some time. We understand that the lockdown is in place in Israel. It has been for some weeks, and they want to extend it. So 7,213 new cases yesterday and 14 new deaths. Looking at small population, this is quite something. And in terms of what they were seeing before, almost 9,000 the day before that, double the number that they had seen on Monday, and double the number that they had seen over the weekend. But then if you look at the Friday before that, they were looking at 7,000 cases. So we're looking at an average about 5,000 cases that Israel is recording per day. It's a problem for them. However, they're taking the vaccine very seriously as well. And
how many deaths so far?
Okay, so we're looking at 4,512 deaths in Israel. Okay. So because they have the might regionally to be able to do certain things, it was assumed that they were going to help countries in their neighborhood, Palestine being one of them. But we know the historic issues that they've had with Palestine.
Yeah.
But they've come under pressure from the United Nations in terms of why they would not want to help. They've taken a very firm stance that they're going to take care of their people first.
They're doing what they need to do for the nationalists of their country.
Exactly.
Look at the death toll as well, though. It's of the total number of cases that they've had so far, 0.8% have resulted in death.
Yes.
Less than 1% what has resulted in death.
The death toll has not been a big deal here. Plus, a lot of the cases that they have found have been asymptomatic in Israel.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And Europe?
Okay, so let's look at the European
Yesterday,
countries.
the Prime Minister of the UK was saying something. So what's happening there now?
Well, I mean, they're still under lockdown. In many of these countries of the kingdom. So, what did Boris Johnson say yesterday? So now with over 100,000 people having died from this, he says it's hard to commute the sorrow of 100,000 milestones. So 100,000 people have died. And so he said he has taken full responsibility for the government's actions and says we truly did everything that we could. He says he's sorry for the loss of life. but that he said that it was hard to commute the sorrow contained in this grim statistic. He gave his deepest condolences. But he's also gone ahead to say that, they're not going to give up and they're going to continue doing whatever they can. They're under a national lockdown. Some people have to stay at home and they can't go out except for going to get food and such. He says he was going to give more details in the next few days and weeks about when and how things were going to open again. But for now, things are remaining in that state. Everybody has to remain under lockdown. It would look as if he was very, very taken with the fact that they had reached this number of people having died. He did not think that they were going to get here. And so it was an issue. And he's saying, look, we've done everything. We have done everything that we possibly could have done. But it doesn't mean that they're going to stop. And there are calls for, open it up again and let people go out. But he's take responsibility for deaths that can be avoided. Yeah. So because of that, he's not going to lift the lockdown. Not now. And we'll give some information in a couple of weeks about how that would roll out.
That's an interesting graph that you're looking at there from the BBC. From the 27th of March, 1,000 deaths. A month later, 25,000 deaths in April. So it's a serious spike. And then goes all the way in November, 50,000, and now 100,000.
Yeah, I mean, from the 3rd of January until the 27th of January, 25,000 people in the UK have died in 3 weeks.
Wow. Yesterday, they recorded almost the total number of people that have died in Kenya.
Yes.
Yesterday alone. It's big. It's big.
It is.
Anyway, let's continue to, pray and do the best that we can to avoid COVID-19. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. We're live streaming on Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and our website, spicefm.co.ke. Wherever you are, we want to know that you are locked in. And we will be saying hello to you before we take a look at the headlines. Good morning. 6:15. Time for us to look at the weather.
Did you know that knowing your HIV status is simple? You can visit your nearest health center where you will be tested for free, or you can test yourself using the self-kits sold at chemists for 500 shillings only. If you test HIV positive, don't fear, because there is medication that will allow you to live your normal life. You will also be counseled on how to live with HIV and fulfill your life goals or dreams. Knowing your HIV status as a parent is beneficial for yourself and your loved ones. Expectant mothers with HIV, did you know it's possible to deliver a healthy, uninfected baby? Visit a health facility near you during your antenatal visits to get proper information, advice, and treatment for HIV. HIV treatment can improve your overall health and can protect an unborn baby from contracting HIV before, during delivery, and after birth. We must not exclude or discriminate against our HIV-positive counterparts because living with the virus is not a curse. Follow the Ministry of Health's instructions to protect ourselves from HIV and also to protect ourselves from the coronavirus that causes COVID-19. Do you know your status? This message has been brought to you by the National AIDS Control Council. Health is an important component in the life of a human being. A nation's prosperity is pegged on its citizens' well-being and proper health infrastructure. The right to health is a fundamental human right guaranteed in the Constitution of Kenya. But during this pandemic period, the health sector has faced many challenges that have affected their services. Pregnant women and those seeking reproductive health services have been the most affected. On our second episode of Kiocha Hoja, we will focus on the effects of COVID-19 on women's health and how they can be cushioned in the future.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather
It's like
with
a clear
Spice
Wednesday
FM.
in Nairobi at 16 degrees. We'll come down to lows of 15, going to highs of 28. Nyeri's a bit chilly this morning, at least by Kenyan standards. 9 degrees. Clear skies, however. Highs of 25 today when the sun does come out. It's cloudy in Nakuru at 13, going to highs of 28 today. Clear skies in Eldoret at 12, highs of 25 and lows of 11. It's also clear in Kisumu at 17, highs of 30 and lows of 19. We're looking at clear conditions in Kakamega at 17 degrees, highs of 33 and lows of 13. It's also going to be a warm day in Mombasa, mostly clear conditions conditions at 24. That'll be the low for today as well, going to highs of 32. Highs of 31 in Malindi. Mostly clear conditions, currently at 25 degrees. It's also clear in Kampala at 17, highs of 27 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is clear as well, for now at least, highs of 32 and coming down to lows of 26. Experiencing light rain in Johannesburg at 17 degrees right now, highs of 23 and lows of 16. It's clear in Lagos at 27, highs of 34 and lows of 24. We're looking at 24 in Kinshasa as well, light rain, highs of 32. It's just a little bit chilly in Beijing at -1. Sunny conditions, however. 4 degrees will be the high and lows of -9. It's cloudy in Paris at 2. It'll go to highs of 10 and lows of 8. It is also going to highs of 10 in London. Currently at 8 and mostly cloudy. It's going to ring in at 2 degrees in New York at the moment. That'll be the high for today, coming back down to lows of 1 when it comes into Wednesday morning. We'll take a look at what the weather looks like as the minutes tick by.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4.
Wherever you are, who is online?
Okay, so Honorable Reagan Hanskel Nyandinga Jr. is tuned in from Kapedo.
Well, what? Hey,
Yeah.
Reagan was not in Kapedo the other day. Are you part of the operation, Reagan? Mheshimiwa Hanskel Nyandinga.
Yeah, and now the dusk till dawn curfew, at least for today, is officially over by 19 minutes.
Hiya.
So I guess you're out, right? Okay. Kihihi Kinyanjui is also tuned in. Good morning, Team Spicy says. Shadrach Kiprono, good morning. You're in as usual. Karibu Sana. Master Dan, 1 degree in Beijing. Good morning. Team Early Birds, according to Cyprian Mwaura. Happy to be alive and listening to you guys. Blessed day ahead. You as well. Robert Mboko is tuned in from Mombasa. And Shiro Ondongo is tuned in from Atlanta. She says she took the Pfizer vaccine. She's doing her part and she says it's better than the alternative of getting sick.
Well
done, Shiro. Moses Gashari is tuned in from Juja. And he wants to visit the studio at some point. Well,
Moses will invite you. Ingia kwa DM. Slide into the DM.
right. Do just that. Tiger Man is tuning from Botswana this morning.
Tiger Man.
Yes.
All right.
Stanley Ngashe says, good morning, Ndu City and Eriko. Tuned in from Salama in Juja. Have a good day, people. And Waterman is tuned in from Minneapolis. Sammy Amoni is tuned in from Mombasa. Clinton Havertz. Good morning. Naomba frequency ya Spice huku Western.
Western wapi?
Kamega, Busia,
Bungoma.
Bungoma, Vihiga.
Yeah, Western Kenya. Even Nyanza is in Western.
It is.
Okay, give
So
all.
let's start. Kisumu 102.5.
Good job.
Eldoret 96.7. And 96.0 in Nakuru. Try any of those frequencies. So 102.5 for the Kisumu region if you think you're closer to Kisumu. If you're closer to LD, 96.7. If you're closer to Nakuru, 96.0.
Super. Clinton, one of those should get you there.
Yes.
And Glow Etienne is tuned in from Abu Dhabi. And guess what? Shirage is on, or at least getting to the station this morning. And he says that we should look into the COVID-19 numbers in Tanzania. It looks as if some numbers were hidden and now they're overwhelmed. Well, that's something to check out. Good morning,
Overwhelmed.
everybody.
Okay. Good morning, City.
Yes.
Today's proverb.
Righto. A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
Mganga hajigangi. A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
No.
It's unfair, isn't it?
To who? Himself.
Yeah. Surely.
Balance. You can't have everything, can you?
Yeah. You can't, huh?
Nope.
All right. So let's take a look at the headlines. BBI, 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 yo. IEBC says 1.14 million signatures verified. Those are indeed registered voters. They're in the voters' roll. So BBI is a go. Next thing that he has done, the chairman of the IEBC, is to send this to all the 47 county assemblies, telling them, okay, now you have a job to do. So we have started. Reggae is now moving to the counties. That is what the headlines are saying. Reggae is moving to the counties. The next job is, in the next 3 months, all the 47 county assemblies are going to receive this BBI, Constitution Referendum Bill. They will debate it, and you need at least half of them to pass this. Half of them pass this. It then goes to the speakers of the Senate and the National Assembly. The Senate and the National Assembly discusses it, quick fast. At least half of the members approve it, and then IEBC delivers this to a referendum. In a referendum, you need to have participation, not just voting yes or no, at least people turning out to vote. 20% of the registered voters in at least half of the counties. So if you get 28 counties with at least 20% of the registered voters participating in a referendum, that is tick number one. Now the next tick is at least half of those counties pass. If you get 28 counties passing in a referendum, next thing, it goes back to Parliament. Parliament gives it to the President. President assents it, and that's the Constitution changes. Bas.
End of story.
End of story.
Or beginning of story.
That's it. So the standard is looking at which counties will dance to reggae. It says this is for the first time in a long time when MCAs have all the power in their hands.
They do.
Now they are just going to be, wooed left, right, and center.
They have to be spoken to.
And then it'll be told, all right, so pass this thing. So 28 of them, of these county assemblies pass. Even as the Secretariat was saying, we expect, yes, there are some counties that are going to say no to this, but we are looking at 28. Past the 28 threshold, we are good. 28. Ekuru Okot was not able to marshal 28. But at least he got the signatures. The first time that there was an attempt to amend the Constitution was 4 years into the life of the Constitution, when the Chord Coalition came together and they were calling it Okoa Kenya, collected a number of things that they called signatures, and IEBC said, those things that you've brought do not represent registered voters. And so it flopped at that stage. This time, it's going to be different. So we have that going on into the counties.
Okay.
Chances of 28 county assemblies voting yes?
Even more.
Well, it's interesting because on the front page of The Nation, it talks about the battle for BBI moves to the counties, and a new sense of importance has been handed to the MCAs. Never before in the country's history have MCAs wielded as much power. They have had 3 months to decide the fate of the Building Bridges Initiative draft, and whichever way they vote would change the course of Kenya's politics for good. So, number one, reforms roadmap. The counties' assemblies have 3 months to consider and approve or reject the draft bill, then submit, just as you've said, to the National Assembly, then to Parliament, before the President requests the IEBC to conduct the referendum. The bill shall be approved in a referendum if at least 20% of the registered voters in half, okay? So it goes through to that. But now what this is saying is that the MCAs are the ones who seem to be holding this thing in their fists.
Well, in truth, though, the MCAs...
No?
Come on.
So the Constitution,
Please.
the Constitution
Eric, please explain.
requires... Let me just give you this.
Eric is
first.
exclaiming and even groaning in the process. I want to understand what
Let me tell you what the Constitution says, or rather what it requires. That each county assembly is to consider the bill within 3 months of its submission to the IEBC. It is them who would either accept or reject.
It is them. You think the county assemblies are going to sit there and actually open this bill page by page and look at article per article and debate?
I hear you doubting that they would do the
let's
due
just
diligence.
be clear here, right? Those that are in Tanga are going to vote no. Those that are in Kieleweke and Handshake are going to vote yes.
Okay.
Case closed.
Okay.
They'll be called, they'll be told, so Munatakaje, so let's pass this thing.
You see, what Eric has just said is that Kieleweke and Tanga has now they've both become national movements. Okay? Just like the dynasty and the hustler narrative has become a national narrative. So even in countries where, because For the longest time, Tanga Kieleweke was a Jubilee issue. But it appears that it has morphed.
You see, Kieleweke encompasses the Kieleweke side of Jubilee plus the handshake partners. And in this particular case, the handshake partners here are all those that are aligned to the BBI. So we are talking about ANC, we are talking about Ford Kenya, we are talking about Maendeleo Chap Chap, we are talking about Wiper, we are talking about ODM. All those guys, all of them are pro-BBI. So any county that has a lot of following from any of these parties, it's done. There's nothing at you. There'll be Hansard showing that they discussed this and they said this is good. But
I'm sure
the Hansard will just have the issues of, this is the best thing for the country. Mr. Speaker, I stand to support this.
Or, Mr. Speaker, I oppose this thing.
Because this thing is going to take us to the dogs.
And the Speaker says, okay, vote.
Yeah. Let's just do what we came to do here anyway. So you guys, we are passing this thing and tweet? Yes. You guys, we are...
How many are
failing
against?
this thing.
Okay, fine. The rest are for.
We are done. So it's sort of a done deal that they are highly likely to get at least 28 county assemblies voting yes.
That they will get.
It goes to Parliament. At least half of members in the Senate and half of the members in the National Assembly.
We will get. You see, we not only will get the numbers, but look. If you take just the slightest of glimpses at the way politicians in this country behave, and by politicians I mean all, MCAs, senators, MPs,
governors.
Yes, governors.
So I hear you saying that even before it's decided.
This thing. We're going to a referendum. Now that's where the point will be.
That's where, okay.
Yes.
But when we are at the referendum,
now.
we'll have a
But
different
for
discussion.
now, it's not a matter of are we going to referendum
No.
or it's not. That one is already
We're going to a
done.
referendum.
That
We're going
one,
to
the
a
horse has
referendum. That's a
bolted.
done deal.
And remember,
Okay.
the immediate former Chief Justice handed over the president a beautiful gift.
To send all these folks home.
He can. I mean, the debates around us, whether is it in his interest to, yes, there are those debates, but he can.
So referendum is coming. Now, we're already starting to campaign for referendum. The president yesterday was meeting governors from Mount Kenya region. He's going to be doing a Mount Kenya tour in coming days. He's meeting the leadership in Sagana. Campaigns in earnest.
You know, there's one thing about Central Kenya and the voter, from what I have perceived. This is purely anecdotal. No research, no survey. If they are not spoken to and they do not understand, the likelihood of them voting is next to zero. You have to come and explain and say, this thing we're saying. They're not for or against you, but explain. What are you saying?
What are you saying?
Tell us. But unfortunately, there is a problem here in Central Kenya. The politicians that Central Kenya don't seem to have the support of their people. You get the impression that there is a huge residue of disappointment that people have with their political leaders.
Yep.
Yes. So if they're the ones pushing the BBI, there will be a problem.
There's issues
There
left,
will be a
right, and
problem.
center. And
Yes.
now the other issue is, if they're not the ones pushing the BBI, Irongo Kangata says there's another issue. If you use the Ngao officers,
Or you push it even further away.
hey, let's take a break. Let's see what's happening on the roads. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room, 29 minutes to 7.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Malindi.
The Thika Superhighway this morning, Utali towards Pangani Tunnel, very slow at this moment. It's already building up as you try to get into the city today. So Thika Road is already giving up those vibes. Coming from the direction of the airport on Mombasa Road, this is just past the SGR, headed out then towards Cabanas. Also quite slow this morning. It has already built up quite some. Anybody getting into the city at least before 8 o'clock should have left by now. We're looking at traffic on Katani Road, almost 2 kilometers already. Traffic management is not happening there right now. Kiambu Road has already built up, guys, and they're trying to then connect to Thika Road. Is going to be one for the books this morning. So we're already seeing traffic building up around certain parts. Are you stuck somewhere? You want to let us know? Talk to us on Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127. Let's see how we can keep it moving this Wednesday morning.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94
Right,
point.
so let's look at other headlines. So the budget policy statement is out. The National Treasury has presented it to Parliament, the National Assembly, talking about how much they want to spend, the government wants to spend in the next financial year, 2021-2022. 3 trillion shillings budget. City, what are they saying? Where is this money going?
You know, this is where the problem is.
You moved the mic from you.
I am not actually even going. It's the disdain.
You're done.
I'm
You want to
completely.
throw something?
No, I'm disturbed because if you read what has been written here, you know it's not new. If you read the focus of where the money should be, again, it's not new. Now, unfortunately, because it's not new, I'm likely to align it with what I have seen happening when the monies we have spoken of getting and the disbursement of them have been spoken of. We have been said, we've been caught asking, so where did this money go exactly? And why are we taking it in that direction? You see, the president speaks convincingly. He speaks earnestly. The Minister for Finance comes and says, we put this in place. The one thing, though, that happens is that we get taxed more, guaranteed. Now, this more, which country in the world have we seen that has developed by the country taxing its people to the very bare bones?
Nobody.
Which one? Because that's where we're headed with all this.
It doesn't work.
We are taxing and we are borrowing.
So we are going to be taxed.
We borrow.
We're
we
definitely
tax.
going to be taxed.
Tax.
Now remember, we have a working population of people who are employed whose salaries were already reduced.
Yes.
Okay? And the taxes have increased. This formula seems to be the working formula the government trying to tell us is going to move us out of this situation we're in. Tell me, you reduce what people are earning, so you reduce their spending capacity. You tax them more. What on
Taking
God's-
some more money out of
Yes.
their
What
pockets.
on God's good earth are you doing?
Yeah.
You leave them with even less to spend. You ask my opinion? There it is.
Okay, so with all that, let's look at how which ministries or departments are getting the money, okay? Parliament, and this is the National Assembly and the Senate, which are both headquartered in Nairobi, and all their sittings happen in Nairobi, apart from just once in a while when the Senate will decide, wacha twende tukaone vile watu wanafanya, and then they'll move out, is going to get 37.8 billion shillings. 37.8 billion shillings for legislation and checking how the national government is behaving.
Is it more or less than what they've been receiving?
It's more.
Aha, it is more.
Yes, the other arm of government, the judiciary, which has branches across the country,
Don't tell me.
magistrates.
It'll get less.
It is getting a drop of what it has now applied for. Let's look at this. If we go by how much we steal every day, that is 2 billion shillings.
If we go by the proclamation that
Yes.
the president himself made,
Yes. 9 days worth of stolen money goes to the judiciary for a whole year. 17.9 billion shillings. What you guys are likely to steal between now and Friday next week. All that. Give it to the judiciary and tell
So-
them, run our courts.
so essentially the judiciary should actually have a word with these people who have a way of stealing our money.
Yeah.
Tell them, folks, help us run this particular department.
Yeah. Still come to court. We tunagawana. I set you free.
Yes.
Because you'll be brought to court anyway. Right? Once you've stolen, you come. You just present yourself to the DPP.
See me?
Come to the judiciary, plead guilty. I give you a lenient sentence. Give us half.
Community service.
Yeah.
Near where you live.
Near where you live.
Yes, at night.
Yeah.
So that nobody can see you sweeping the road.
Bas. 17.9 billion shillings to the health is going to get 119.8 billion shillings.
More or less.
This is, of course, an increase
Bye.
by 7.3% from 111 to 119.
Hooray.
Now, this is national level. Okay? Remember, health is a devolved function.
Yep.
120 billion shillings is going to be spent by the national government on health. The national government runs policy, and the national government runs the level 6 hospitals. Higher. Agriculture, which is another devolved function, gets an increase of about 10% to 70 billion shillings in that financial year.
And is that money going to the counties? Or is it still going
No. It's what is
national?
being run at the national level on agriculture, which is
Policy and all these other things and creating.
Yes. 70B. Environment, protection, water, and natural resources. It gets a slight budget cut, but it's going to receive 102 billion shillings. Education, of course, always gets the bulk of the money. 510 billion shillings. It gets an increase. National Treasury gets 100.7 billion shillings to run the National Treasury. And this is, of course, also goes into running KRA and the others. Governance, security, law and order, 216 billion shillings. Social protection, culture and recreation, 71 billion shillings. Social protection is getting more money than agriculture. Well, social protection is being run at the national level. It's not a devolved function. So anyway, out of all that money, we are going to borrow in one financial year 1 trillion shillings. That's the plan. 1 trillion shillings out of a 3 trillion shilling budget is loans.
Just a small question.
Eh.
In this budget, have we included what we're going to be paying those we already owe, not the people we're going to borrow from?
Yes.
Okay.
The money that goes into
And how much are we going to pay
into
these
that
people
consolidated bond, that amount is going to be about 1 trillion plus. I was gonna give you that figure. Yeah, it's quite some good amount of money that is going to that. So we are borrowing 1 trillion, and we will be repaying back in terms of debts a similar amount, about 1 trillion. That goes as a first charge from the consolidated fund. You know, that's what happens. Money comes in, and before anything else happens, it goes out.
Yeah, my good Lord. See,
Yeah.
See, let me give you another story.
Okay, let's talk about other things.
Okay. So, the suspect in the Kin murder is unfit to stand trial. We saw the news of this come out yesterday. Lawrence Warunge, the chief suspect in the murder of his parents and siblings, is not fit to stand trial. Medical assessment done at Mathare National Teaching and Referral Hospital shows that Lawrence suffers from induced psychosis, a condition characterized by hallucinations and or delusions. It further states that he has a history of smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol. Okay? The prosecution tabled the report yesterday before Kiambu Chief Magistrate Patricia Gishohi and made an application for extension of custodial orders, which the Chief Magistrate granted. She says she's carefully gone through the mental report, and the first respondent is unfit to stand they allow them to hold him for a further 30 days. The court ordered that Lawrence be taken back to Mathare Hospital to start treatment. The case will be mentioned on the 1st of March. So he's in custody, or rather has been in custody for 15 days, as the police were investigating the killings of his father, mother, and siblings, as well as a construction worker in their Karura home in Kiambu. So his girlfriend, who is his co-accused, was released and after 15 days in custody. She says, or rather it has been said that she will be a state witness.
So she's not going to be charged?
No, because
Okay.
she will cooperate with the state.
So she'll be a state witness in a case against who?
Her boyfriend.
No, her boyfriend is not fit to stand trial.
No, but when the case will be heard,
He
come
will
the
be fit
1st
at
of
some
March.
point. Right now, he's
because
not
what they're
fit.
saying is 30 days, they need to continue to start
They'll
the
get him
treatment.
fit for trial.
He will be fit for trial
Don't
when
worry.
the case will come to mention on the 1st of
Whatever
March.
ails him will be sorted out.
It will be sorted.
And
now,
then he'll
come
be
that
fit to
1st
stand
of
trial.
March, his girlfriend will now be a witness for the state against him. Trust
Eric,
me,
Eric,
it's going to
do you
happen.
think that this is
just
a permanent
like that.
state, that he's just going to be unfit
You
for the
think
rest of
he'll
his
be
life?
unfit all the time?
It could be a permanent mental issue.
They'll make sure he's.
That is why
They've
there are
got-
people who study these things, and that is why there are people who actually ensure that people who have those conditions are treated. He will get treatment.
He'll be all right.
So at some point,
He
then
will stand trial.
this case will
and
then
his
start.
girlfriend will
Sooner rather than
cooperate.
later.
She has already agreed. That's why
Meanwhile,
she's been released.
the government may offer him a scholarship.
So meanwhile, in the meantime, he's getting now admitted for treatment.
Yes,
Yes.
Psychiatric
yes.
help.
But also he'll be contained so that he can be observed closely.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, people keep thinking that imprisonment is always negative. It isn't.
I should also mention that there was the application to have him released on bail.
So police have no one else.
No. There was the application to have him released on bail, and that he could then be attending the hospital sessions from his home, wherever that would be. But the police said absolutely not, because he is suspected to have killed 2 siblings, and his other 2 sisters are still alive, that there's a chance that they also could be harmed by him, and that he's also a flight risk because of the fact that he went into hiding when they were looking for him soon after the death of his family members and the construction worker. So bail was denied.
So the psychiatrist who evaluated him and found him to be unfit for trial did not recommend a custodial treatment.
No, he did. He did.
But the judge is releasing him.
No, the judge is not releasing him. They had applied, but it was denied. Yeah.
What are they applying? When the
Well,
doctor
they said
says
that
this
he-
guy needs to be admitted.
No, they said that he could actually. What they were saying is that this treatment that he was getting was not necessary for him to reside at the hospital. He could come and go to the hospital, come and go from the hospital to get
Okay.
the treatment. But
Okay.
the judge said no.
I hear all these things and I'm a bit worried.
I'm disturbed, actually.
I'm a bit worried that we may not get justice for the family.
Why do you say that?
Because first, the police appear to have only one person to charge. And then this one person is this one who they say confessed to this.
Yeah, he's said
Right.
to have confessed.
But that we then realize that all those things that you're saying he confessed, he was mentally unstable.
So maybe he
So
confessed.
any of his
because-
confession cannot really stand. By the time point he's well, it could be months, it could be a year, it could be more. By the time now you're taking that case to court, do you have sufficient evidence to actually stand a murder charge, multiple murder charges? Will the police be able to produce? Because the judge will be sitting there looking, prove beyond reasonable doubt that this person is the one who killed these people.
My concern also is if the man is unstable mentally, we have known of cases where people have gone and harmed themselves in prison.
Yep.
So that by the time you talk about the case, the person themselves have ceased to exist in the world of the living. So, again, what if the only witness they have, say, moves out of the country? I mean, you have a valid point. This thing is fraught with improbabilities and things that could easily render this case null and void even before it's actually taken up.
Yeah. And even the actual story behind this particular gruesome murders may not come out. If the police do not dig deeper and get, proper motive and they show history of why it led to this point where this person could have committed this murder and all that, justice for the people that died and their kin. Justice also includes closure. I want to know why. I want to know how, what. And if you're not able to take that to court, then you may have an issue. It's 6:45. Let's take another break. Quick one. And then we look at other headlines in the papers. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice.
Kenya eyes 6. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, Kenya plans. Okay, there's a problem here. Kenya plans to more than double the amount of electricity that the power producers can generate, a move that would see consumers pay dearly to support idle power.
Sorry. Wait again.
So, CT, this headline. I know that you were not happy because of the tax.
Can I read the headline again?
Yeah,
And then the story?
I want
And
to
then the
ensure that I
intro.
understand it.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is on which page of which paper?
This is
So,
standard.
Kenya eyes 6,700 megawatts to broaden access to power.
Okay.
Okay? The state aims to achieve universal electricity access, which could force consumers to pay for idle capacity. Kenya plans to more than double the amount of electricity that the power producers can generate, a move that would see consumers pay dearly to support idle power. This is as the state continues to pursue the combination of adequate energy to fire industries as well as the elusive cheap power. This would, however, see consumers fit the extra bill. The National Treasury budget documents indicate the government plans to increase the country's electricity generation capacity to 6,700 megawatts from the current 2,819. Treasury said this would enable the country to have adequate power to cater for industries as well as Kenyans, with its aim of achieving universal electricity access. The state has also earmarked coal as among the sources of power that would enable the country grow its power generating capacity and lower the cost of electricity. So the statement, however, was not specific on the timelines for
Of course,
increasing
and that's
the
what
general
I wanted to say.
capacity.
This is not new. I thought it was something that was, if it's about increasing the capacity, this is something that the government has been talking about for a while, increasing it from 2,000 so megawatts to getting at least 4,000. That's why the Amu coal power plant was commissioned. That's why we are talking about the Electricana wind farm. That's why we're talking about buying power from Ethiopia. All these things are part of a conversation.
They only have 1 year and 11 months to do it, though.
No, not
Their
necessarily.
deadline. To reach universal electricity access,
Yeah, and
they have a deadline of 2022.
They have a deadline of 2022 to do 500,000 houses a year.
No, why this is just one of them. Why
Just-
it's like you're upset. Why?
No.
No,
It-
I'm not. I'm actually just looking at that story and feeling that it is also getting sensational at some point. First of all, what is it that has made very many industries shut down in the country and move cost of power and availability and access to power? What is it that those that are running these things would say? Give us power and we can come and set up. And then now we can have a conversation about the cost of power. First of all, is there power? Now we are at a point where that balance has not yet been reached. So there's about a bit of an excess power being generated vis-a-vis the consumption, and there's a bit of trying to attract industries to come and set up in the country. That is a game that has got to be played and being played well. The questions would be, what is Betty Maina and her ministry doing to attract investors into the country? To make sure that we have more industries, the big power consumers coming into the country.
How do we remedy, for instance, because every time we talk about power, well, let's put it this way, look at your power bill and look at what you're actually paying for, okay? It appears that in this country, we pay for power which we don't use. You actually pay for it. You don't use it, but you pay for it. Why? Because the contract as it was designed and as it was signed guarantees that whoever is supposed to produce that power gets paid whether they're producing power or not. Now, the underlying issue here seems to be the power producers who have this, and it's a benefit, are the expensive ones. We have cheap sources of power production. but-
Available,
Yes,
yeah.
but those don't seem to be the favored option.
No.
What am I saying? There are many discussions around the issues of power which have all remained unresolved, especially the contentious ones. You can't gloss over it now and tell us we are now going to be producing more power. Okay, if it's just a reporting issue, someone looked for articles to report and thought this is a good thing to talk about, we understand. But as Eric pointed out, it joins the queue of the many, many things that the government has said it's going to do. But we have to ask, please, let's get the story straight. Okay?
I think it's important for us to actually, because I also feel from reading various articles that we get a lot of misreporting and misconceptions on the issue of power. the cost and why it's high, why. One of these days, we are going to have in the studio the CEO of Kengen, the largest power producer, and then we'll also have the CEO of Kenya Power just to explain to us about power. I think we need that.
It would be ideal.
We need that. Anyway, auditor admits grave errors in 7.8 billion shilling contracts report. So MPs investigating these COVID-related manenos at KEMSA are reading mischief in claims of errors in an audit of some of the payments. An Auditor General's special report had indicated that Shop and Buy company received 970 million shillings, while NanoPay was paid 340 million. But the Auditor General's office now claims an error in its report, saying NanoPay only received 34, not 340. There was a zero that just sneaked its way into this. It did not immediately provide details of the errors in payments to Shop and Buy. So the Auditor General says, no. Actually, these guys were paid 34 million.
It's a simple explanation.
Not 340 million. Now, members of this Public Investments Committee of the National Assembly, they say they require proper explanation about these errors, citing the rigorous audit process. How is this a typing error? How can the 10 be missing? These reports are done by qualified officers. They are checked and counter-checked before being presented for signing. This is according to Mishimboko, the MP for Likoni. This time, we did an explanation. Every time there's an error, it's blamed on typing or computers. This time...
It was both.
Yeah. Both typing, computers and fingers that typed. According to Mvita MP, Abdul Swamad Nasir, who is the chairman of this PIC, all the 102 firms use the same system. They all supplied before they were called to come and negotiate with KEMSA. That was totally against the law. So this investigation is still ongoing. You know what I feel about these investigations. In terms of confidence in what they're going to tell us.
Your feeling isn't misplaced, if you think about it. It isn't misplaced at all. Because, you see, it is possible that this was a genuine error. But unfortunately, the track record of government agencies and the deficit of truth that is also associated with them comes into play whenever such a thing happens. Because even if you provide evidence, there will still be doubt.
There'll be issues
They will say, yes, even if it is clear, and you even take people to where it is, they stored whatever was purchased, and you can tell it was actually 34 million shillings worth. No one will believe it.
What?
You see, some of these things that we talk about seem like they're small matters. They never are. You allow a certain narrative to take hold in the minds of the people, they will not move away from it.
Yep.
Especially when it is an opportunity to blame and to point fingers at people who they feel are in power, in positions of authority, and whom they blame for whatever problems they have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bas. It'll just be the same. Okay, another headline.
Well, I was going to look at this one here that talked about Kalonzo leads Big Four in unity call ahead of 2022. Not because I was extremely interested in that.
In the big call.
In the Big Four, even who's leading these Big Four. But this unity call is what I'm looking at again, because what unity is really unity when it comes to the words of politicians.
Please remember, this is politics. Huh?
That's what I said. What really is
huh?
really unity when it comes to the words of politicians. KANU, Wiper, ANC, and Ford K pledge unity as 2022 calls. This pledge for unity could be, for the coming months.
But you're aware that this pledging also goes into these newly founded parties that we always have.
Wait now, let me tell you. The talk of a possible coalition bringing together these four parties dominated speeches during a political rally in Machakos town yesterday. Party leaders Gideon Moy for KANU, Kalonzo Musyoka for Wiper, Musalia Mudavadi for ANC, and Moses Wetangula for Ford Kenya were at the Mulu Mutisia Gardens to launch campaigns for Agnes Kavindu Mudhama, Wiper leader's flag bearer in the forthcoming senatorial by-election. The by-election is slated for the 18th of March. The seat fell vacant after the death of former Senator Boniface Kabaka last year. So they revealed that they were coming together in taking a common approach to ensure that they form the next government after President Uhuru Kenyatta's exit. Okay? So just so you know, there's another coalition. But I'm just really interested. I'm really bemused by these calls for unity, and whether it is just for,
Unity
whatever
is
stirs the
important
pot
for
at
the
this-
country.
yeah.
You know, we've had this from the inception of the independence of this country.
Yeah, so I'm just
Kadu morphed and became Kanu. Then we had a one-party system. Then we went on, and when multipartyism came into being, again we had Ford, and then we had Ford Kenya, then we had Ford Asili, and Ford God knows what the other.
right.
So-
So who says 2021 I cannot give you not another one?
Oh no,
We'll have a coalition.
But remember this, it's progress. With every electoral cycle, we have new.
And here's yet another
And
one.
so in case
Coalition building, by
Yes.
the way, is nothing big. Shortly, we'll be having
Or-
a guest in the studio, and this is the Israeli ambassador to Kenya. He'll tell us about coalitions.
And-
You
and
talk
how
about coalitions. My friend.
forget coalitions, the number of elections that that people can have.
Yes.
Because this coalition goes this way, the other one goes the other way. Yes.
And all of them are coming, for the benefit of the people.
Of course, always. It's
They're always
always,
all for
unity.
the benefit of the people.
it's always for the
Unity.
benefit of the people. Come on, guys.
It's unity, and it's looking forward into how these things are going to work.
It's for you. It's for me. It's for us.
It's for all of us.
Yes.
Yeah. So let's see how that goes. In the meantime, Kenya and Somalia are renewing their teeth, but we'll have that conversation.
They've
some
gone to
other
the AU now.
IGAD, AU,
Everybody.
Commission, President has written and said, I'm concerned. IGAD has said, we have investigated what Somalia was saying and we found it to be unfounded. But Somalia has said, no, wait.
Here,
Now
here,
Kenya is arming people to come and fight.
Let me just point out something. This area of Somalia that borders us most closely was actually part of Kenya geographically until the year 1926, when the British decided to give it to the Italians, okay? And the problems have never ceased.
Bas.
Yes. So,
Well, they
That's
have a
it.
problem with. It's a typical example of giving away something that's not yours. It's
it
likely to
was
cause
theirs.
problems. Come on.
Excuse me, at
It's
that
likely
point
to
in
cause
time,
problems.
believe me, those who were giving it away believed it was theirs to give.
Perspectives. Perspectives.
Perspective CT.
Let's go to the top of the hour. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a situation room broadcasting from Nairobi to the world. We're online. Shortly, we'll be live on KTN Home as well as here on Spice FM. We'll be having a conversation on Agri-Talk right here in the situation room. This time, looking at what the Israeli government is doing in partnership with the Kenyan government to promote agriculture in the country, plus other conversations. In the room with us is Ambassador Oded Joseph. He is the ambassador of Israel to Kenya and several other countries in the region. It's 7 o'clock. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
Okay, guys, so what are we looking at now this morning? Yes, traffic is still building up on Thika Road. Some folks made it to town really early, but those who did not, unfortunately, now are stuck. Waiaki Way going towards Kangemi heading out is slow but sure. That's not moving with too many problems right now. Let's look at Thika Road coming then in towards Pangani. At the tunnel there, it slows down and then on towards Tomboya. Where else are we having problems today? Jogo Road, a little bit of a hold up right there at the roundabout as you then go towards Landis Road and then out towards Industrial Area on the other side. It's a bit slow. Katani Road, we had that problem today. 2 kilometers worth of traffic. Don't know what's going on, but we're going to keep an eye on that and see. Coming off of Mombasa Road, right around the SGR through to General Motors, very slow. Past Bellevue, again, has built up. So we're looking at traffic going all the way into the CBD and out towards Westlands. It is Wednesday. Let's see what it opens up to be later. Talk to us, Spice FMKE on Twitter or text 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation
Two and a
Room.
half minutes after
The
7.
only
This is
way to
Kenya's biggest
start your
conversation,
day.
The Situation Room. We are broadcasting on Spice FM. We are online, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as spicefm.co.ke. And for the next 2 hours, we are also live on KTN Home. Our tradition is we begin the hour with the day's proverb by C.T. Muga.
Well, today's proverb, as I had mentioned earlier, is Nigerian. A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
A diviner,
Cannot accurately divine,
his own future.
yes, or her own future.
That one, at least, I could immediately think of the Swahili equivalent.
Well, yes, you can, but look at the actuality of it. If, for instance, you are considered a practitioner of these arts in this country and you are in the rural areas, the likelihood of living long is remote. There are places where you'll be hanged, some they'll burn you. So I doubt very much if they're able to define that particular aspect of their lives. But anyway, we'll look into it later.
We'll look into it later.
Yes.
Let's bring in our guest now. We are having a conversation on meaningful discourse on agriculture, on food security, on agribusiness, and we call this Agri-Talk in the Situation Room. Oded Joseph is the Israeli ambassador to Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Seychelles, and Malawi. Man, you cover a wide region. Welcome to the studio.
Good morning. Good morning, all of you. I'm so pleased to join you early this morning.
Thank you.
You seem to be very proud of yourself, of being here early this morning.
Yes, I'm very happy. Actually, as I said, I think the one advantage is you're not stuck in traffic. So
Yeah.
that's one advantage. We always have to look at the full half of the glass, right?
Yes.
Great.
It's always half full. So tell us about the work that the embassy does. So your embassy covers this wide region, and this is therefore representing the government of Israel.
Correct. Yes, the Embassy of Israel in Nairobi is accredited to 5 countries, as you've mentioned: Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, the Seychelles, and Uganda. So the scope of what we're doing is very wide, and we're very happy. We have many challenges. We're always busy, never boring. So what can one ask
Yeah.
if not such an interesting and challenging work?
Yes. Because this is Agri-Talk and you're talking about food security. Every time we talk about food security and, growing food in the desert, conversations will always come up about, how Israel have been able to do it. And they're even exporting their food secure. Is it true? Israel is food secure?
Absolutely. I think it came out of a very harsh necessity. When the modern Israel was reestablished in 1948, we understood we have to meet 2 big challenges, immediate challenges. The first was our own security. Unfortunately, when the modern Israel was established, our neighbors were not very happy with it, so they have challenged us on the security level. And we had to very quickly, and we were lucky to do so, to develop a good defense forces that was enabled us to defend ourselves by ourselves. The second issue was to make sure that we are food secured in an arid land. 2/3 of Israel is in arid land. So we had to be very creative about developing those technologies which allow us to make sure that we have enough vegetables, enough fruits, enough food for the population of Israel. So that, I think, brought about what is known today as the startup nation. Unique technologies, creative technologies that allowed us to grow and develop the agriculture sector, even though, as I said, 2/3 of Israel is an arid area.
So how much of your budget do you spend on agriculture every year in terms of percentages?
Wow.
Is it a bigger percentage of this? I'm sure defense takes quite a bit as well.
Well, it's mainly now in it's business. So at the moment, it's not really dependent on or leaning on the Israeli budget, the national budget. So it became very successful at the business level. So I think that's part of the secret. But definitely, it is being still very much one of our main sectors. And as I said, a good way to export our technologies, our unique technologies, and to share it with our good friends around the world.
So, obviously, this has become something that you've been able to do in terms of export this information to other countries, and Kenya being one of them. What are some of the ways that you've been working with Kenya to make sure that Kenya also can at least take steps towards food security? I mean, I know it's far away. There's still many things to be done, but what are some of the ways that you've been working together to get Kenya on this?
Yeah, there are a few major and important pillars of cooperation in this sector. The first is capacity building, sharing our experience and sharing and having capacity building courses, whether courses being held by the Israeli Agency for International Development Cooperation called Mashab, that are being offered to anyone who is interested in the field of agriculture. We are very proud of a 11-month program that is being taking place in the last few years, whereby agriculture students that have graduated in your best universities or best TVETs are arriving in Israel for 11-month program. They're being allocated to different farms, and they work with their own hands. They touch with their own hand Israeli technologies. They are part and parcels of different types of farms in Israel. And with that experience, after 11 months, they also save money in Israel. They are probably the best human resource to adapt what they've seen in Israel and the Israeli perspective of how to grow and how to develop agriculture sectors to the unique necessities and environment here in Kenya. So I think this has been a very successful program, and we are now very much focused on the alumni of this program to see how we could facilitate with the government of Kenya for them to become successful agripreneurs. So capacity building was definitely one of these modes of cooperation. The second is building up centers of excellence and model farms. One of them is well known as Galana Kulala, which is in one of your arid areas. As we speak, we have a great cooperation with Embu County. We are now discussing to establish an agricultural technical center in one of the Don Bosco's schools in Embu County. And this center would offer capacity building, would be a test ground for Israeli technologies, those who are already well proven, or startups, agri-startups that will be tested in this farm to be adapted to the unique necessities and environment in Kenya. There are other aspects of this agriculture center which we could develop if you want afterwards, but I think this is another very important component, the issue of agriculture centers or centers of excellence. Last but not least is the business sector, the agribusiness sectors. Again, tomorrow, we're happy to have the Israeli Agri Fair in Embu County, whereby Israeli companies will be meeting farmers, corporates, to see how they could utilize those technologies on a business-to-business level. So I think there are many ways and many pillars of our cooperation, and I'm very proud of that because it has been in the past and it is still today. The food security is still today at the heart of the cooperation between Israel and Kenya.
Why Embu and why not any of the other 47 counties?
The more the merrier. Let me just say that one of the issues that we are now discussing with the government of Kenya is exactly that, to get the priorities driven by the government of Kenya, where else we could place centers of excellence. With Embu County, it has been developing as part of our cooperation with that county, but it's not limited to Embu County. Galana Kulalo is actually in 2 counties in Kenya.
Actually, Your Excellency, why I asked is maybe there's something unique about Embu that gave it an advantage. That is actually what I was asking. Because if, say, for instance, that your technology in rehabilitating and changing semi-arid or arid areas into profitable farmland, I don't expect that to happen in central Kenya. I expect you to go to the northern part of the country. So it's with that in mind that I asked the question.
No, I think it's a valid question, and I think it's a relevant question. And as I said, the first model farm that we have established was in an arid area, and that is in Galana Kulalu. We're very much open to try and open these centers of excellence in other parts that are arid. But I think in that respect, you shouldn't also neglect the more fertile places because you could produce more.
True.
So the priorities are being set by the Kenyan side. We are happy to join forces and to share from our experiences in a manner that we work with local experts, because you cannot, even with the Israeli perspective, it cannot be adapted in an effective manner without that being done with local experts, because only the mutual trial of how you utilize Israeli technologies within this unique environment of Kenya that would ensure it will be successful. You cannot just import something that was, that was successful in Israel and just imitate it. You have to
Right.
adapt it to the unique
Conditions, yeah.
circumstances, and that could be only done by joint forces of Israeli experts with Kenyan experts.
Right.
The Kulalu issue, the project that you mentioned, there was a time it had some hiccups. Was that resolved?
Well, let me just say the following. I think if you would ask any professional kulima, any professional farmer, any professional agronomist, you would see how successful the model farm in Galana Kulalu was, in the sense that by utilizing Israeli expertise and Israeli technologies, you've been able to increase the crops for at least 4 times compared to the average. And rather than having 19 sacks out of 1 acre, you have at least 40 out of each acre. And rather than growing just 1 season a year, you're growing 2 seasons a year, which means that you have managed in an arid area to grow 4 times the amount of crops from the same acre. Has it been handled in a perfect manner? Unfortunately, no. There was, as you said, a little bit of hiccups. But I think, and you're asking me about the story of the Israeli success, one of the reasons for the Israeli success is that we were never been hesitant to make mistakes, or we've never even been hesitant to fail. And if you are working under that assumption, you learn from your mistakes. So going back to Galana Kulalu, there are many successes, but we could also learn from the mistakes that took place in that specific project.
Is it an ongoing project now? Because you mentioned it, and just when we're talking about how Kenya and Israel were able to work together, it was one of the first things that you mentioned. So obviously, it would be one of the star projects in the country. And in terms of potential, it had so much, and I say had, I'm hoping that we can say have, has so much potential in terms of what it can produce for the country. Is it still ongoing with the support of the Israeli government?
Well, I'll be very honest. It's really the decision of the Kenyan side. The model farm is there. We have put forward a very detailed proposal to all the relevant agencies in Kenya, how we could move on from the model farm in Galana Kulalu to a national scale program that would establish at least 3 centers of excellence in counties that will be chosen by the Kenyan government of the Kenyan counties. So this is a very detailed proposal. I believe it's now being considered by the relevant Kenyan agencies, and I think it's their decision whether and when we could take it to the next step.
Was it part of the plan that you get to a point where then you'll come up with a proposal on what next? Or is this you adapting to the challenges that you faced in Galana Kulalu, where you got to a point where you didn't get exactly where you wanted to be, you made the mistakes like you're saying, you've learned from the mistakes, now you're trying to see how you can correct the cause? Or was this part of the original plan?
The original plan was to see the Galana Kulalu as a model farm. Yes, absolutely. And from model farms, you always learn what were the positive and the more successful aspects of it, and what you could do in order to improve. So I think the original thinking was that we need a few years to make sure that we could learn from this model farm.
And what are those lessons that you took now from this modern, the main project or the experiment in Galana Kulalu? What are these lessons that you saw? This, we made a mistake here and we have learned a lesson.
No, I think you need the relevant partners to sit here together to analyze it. I don't want to do it on their behalf. There was, of course, here the cooperation between an Israeli company and with the local agencies, and of course with the local government, the local county governments. So I think they're the best ones to do this analysis. What is important from my perspective is that this is another illustration of the good cooperation that is taking place between Israel and Kenya. And specifically, the model farm in Galana Kulalu and other projects on food security were part of the directive of both our leaders that met in 2016 and again in 2017, both President Kenyatta and Prime Minister Netanyahu. So my part, or the embassy part, is to be committed to see how and what could be done from our side to make sure that this specific projects and other similar projects are successful for the benefit, I think, of both Israel and Kenya.
For many years, the Israeli embassy has been in Nairobi. The cooperation between Kenya and Israel has spanned many decades.
Since
But-
1963.
But it's the first time now that we've been in the last couple of years that we're hearing of this direct cooperation between Kenya and Israel when it comes to agriculture and technology. Model farm in Galana Kulalu, a new project in Embu. How would you explain that gap? What has been happening before?
No, I don't think there was a gap. Well, with the one exception that we did have a few years that Kenya decided to sever its relations with Israel. So that's the period. Maybe there was a little bit of a gap. But even then, I don't think it's accurate, because even when we did not have formal diplomatic relations, we still had a lot of cooperation taking place behind the scenes. But actually, I'm very proud of the type of cooperation that has been developing between Israel and Kenya, even before the independence of Kenya, much way before the independence
Actually,
of Kenya.
1903.
Yes, exactly. So I think, and everyone, let me share with you an anecdote that I'm not sure that many know. But as part of these relations that took place and the engagement that took place even before the independence of Kenya was the good cooperation and good engagement between Israeli leaders and the Kenyan leaders. One of them very well known, who happened to be the first president of Kenya, Jomo Kenyatta. And during the colonial times, President Jomo Kenyatta was under home arrest. Israeli officials and Israeli leaders were still engaging with him, to a point where the colonial powers warned the Israelis not to engage and not to meet under home restrictions and home arrest of Jomo Kenyatta. But we were not deterred, because I think friends are being tested when you're in need, and I think we definitely make sure that we want to continue that engagement. Of course, the story of our relations, we have many examples of when Kenya extended their hand towards Israel. The most famous one is under the Entebbe operation. There are many examples of that, and I'm very proud to say that what characterizes our relations is that it goes beyond cooperation that is based on just mutual interest, which is good enough and important enough, but it's truly based on true friendship, and I'm very proud of that.
Actually, what is also not known is at the time when certain parts of Kenya were considered to be part of the Uganda territory that was under the British, the Israelis were actually offered a portion of that land for settlement.
That is absolutely correct.
Yes. So the relationship, as His Excellency says, is a very, very, very old one.
That is very correct, and as you know, there's a saying: wherever you have two Israelis or two Jews, you have at least three opinions. This plan was debated in the Israeli in the Jewish institution at that time, and it was voted against for the simple reason that anyone who reads the Bible recognizes that the natural place for Israel to be established is in our homeland, in Israel, and the land of Zion, the land of Jerusalem. So. And of course, as you know, this is exactly what happened. But I think it could have been very interesting, and for us to be immediate neighbors of Kenya.
It would have been very interesting. In fact, what you're actually saying is that the entire history of this particular region would have changed completely.
Well, I don't know, but as I said, it would have been interesting. But at the end of the day, I think, as I said earlier, it was only natural for the modern Israel to be reestablished in our homeland, in the land of Israel, land of Jerusalem.
But it couldn't have been easy. Would you say, therefore, that just the process of building a nation, not really from scratch, because it had existed before, that, as you correctly put it at the beginning of our discussion, that just that particular process developed within the people of Israel a certain mindset towards looking at problems, dealing with problems, and finding solutions.
Absolutely. I think what is unique about our story is that we were forced for 2,000 years to be spread all over the world. Jews were spread all over the world. My parents were born and raised up in Egypt. My wife's parents were born and raised up in Poland and in Germany. You have Israelis that originated from every part of the world that you can imagine. And so when they all came back in 1948 to reestablish the modern Israel, they actually came back slightly earlier, but the establishment and the independence of Israel was in 1948. When they came back, on the one hand, each and every one of them came with the cultures that they've absorbed for the last 2,000 years. So they spoke different languages, but at the same time, there was something very, very strong that united us, even though when we were spread out in the exile, and that is the Hebrew language, and that is the Jewish Bible and Jewish culture. So the common ground was so strong that it overcame the fact that people were spread over the world for 2,000 years. The other aspect of it, and I think you alluded to that, is the immediate challenges that we had on our own security. So we had to fight very early to ensure our survival. And that created, I think, as I said earlier, a strong defense capability and creativity, which is the basis of our startups. And
on that note of creativity, in the recent past, there has been some heartwarming international movements that have been made with Israel, associating with countries that previously they didn't have diplomatic relationships. For instance, the Arab League countries, Bahrain, UAE, Morocco, etc. Now, that is what we read, but what took place? What has the country had to do to get to this point?
Well, you are very right pointing out that the Middle East is a totally different Middle East compared to 2 decades ago.
Yes.
If in the past the way to characterize the Middle East was to say that this is a region where Arabs are fighting against Israelis, Arabs are against Israel, they want to make sure that we are being thrown to the sea. For the last 2 decades, it's totally different because you actually should characterize the Middle East by the countries that are moderate, that want to see stability and peace, versus very few countries, unfortunately Iran is heading them, that are aiming to destabilizing the region by utilizing proxies, utilizing terrorist infrastructure and so on. So the division is truly between moderates and extremists today in the Middle East. And what you're viewing today, you're rightly referring to the peace and normalizations between Israel and many of those Arab countries. This is exactly due to the fact that we understood we have to join forces to make sure that the Middle East is stable.
Let's take a break at this point. We're having a conversation with His Excellency Oded Joseph. He's the ambassador of Israel in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, and Seychelles. We are talking about the cooperation between Israel and Kenya, and especially because this is AgriTalk in the Situation Room, looking at how then we can take advantage of the technology and the knowledge that Israelis have to boost food security in the country. This conversation is taking place on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. Break now, 26 minutes after 7. We'll be back shortly and continue the conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
When it comes to bridging the information gap to help strengthen the agricultural sector in our country, you can always rely on Farm Kenya to be the glue holding everything together. And now, courtesy of the partnership with Farmstar, things couldn't be better. Introducing Farm Kenya platform, and it goes like this. Our SMS service will help farmers upload and publish their products without smartphones, while the Farm Kenya app will allow buyers locate, purchase from, and engage the farmers directly. So if you're a farmer, send a free SMS to 40446 and connect with buyers free for life. That's 40446. If you're a buyer looking for local produce, download the Farm Kenya app from Google Play Store or the Apple Store for free. Remember, ukulima sio shamba pekee. Ukulima ni digital. Ukulima ni Farm Kenya platform.
Kuimarisha Kenya ni jukumu la Farm Kenya.
Brought to you by Farm Kenya and Farmstar, working to secure your growth. Health is an important component in the life of a human being. A nation's prosperity is pegged on its citizens' well-being and proper health infrastructure. The right to health is a fundamental human right guaranteed in the Constitution of Kenya, but during this pandemic period, the health sector has faced many challenges that have affected their services. Pregnant women and those seeking reproductive health services have been the most affected. On our second episode of Kiocha Hoja, we will focus on the effects of COVID-19 on women's health and how they can be cushioned in the future.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
All right, so we're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi at the moment. The sun peeking through those clouds at some point. 14 degrees, going to highs of 28 and lows of 15. It's mostly cloudy in Nyeri at 14, highs of 25. The highs will be 28 in Nakuru and lows of 13. 10 degrees and partly sunny in Eldoret, highs of 25 and lows of 11. We're looking at lows of 19 in Kisumu today. Sunny conditions at the moment at 17. It's sunny in Kakamega at 17, highs of 33 and lows of 13. It's mostly sunny in Mombasa at 23, highs of 32 and lows of 24. Sunny conditions at 23 in Malindi, highs of 31 and lows of 25. 17 degrees and sunny in Kampala, highs of 27 and lows of 18. We're looking at mostly sunny conditions in 26, highs of 32 in Dar es Salaam. Light rain this morning in Johannesburg at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 16. It's foggy in Lagos at 26, highs of 34 and lows of 24. While in Kinshasa, it's cloudy at 25, highs of 32 and lows of 24.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
All right, so we're looking at Kiambu Road. Which is
Traffic.
There's heavy traffic this morning, trying to then join with the Thika Superhighway. Very, very slow today. Bumper to bumper situations as you're trying to get into the city. This we can see. Also on Mombasa Road, it is quite slow. Outer Ring today also, it's bumper to bumper. The eastern and southern bypasses can, however, be used. They're longer routes, but at least you will be able to avoid the traffic. All right, Thika Road, that's what we're seeing. Heavy traffic this morning, all the way from Garden City. So we're in the middle of traffic hour. Let's see what it looks like in about an hour or so. Tell us where you might be stuck. Spice FMKE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us, or text on 40127.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
All right,
94.4.
7:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, the Situation Room. The conversation continues. We are Eric Latif Nduoko C.T. Muga, joined this morning by the Israeli ambassador to Kenya, Oded Joseph, who is telling us about this small, tiny country the size of about Nyanza province that is in an arid area that is food secure. And we're looking at the country called Kenya.
It is smaller than Nyanza province.
Smaller than Nyanza province.
Yes, it is.
And it's food secure.
Yes.
It's an arid area. And then we're talking about Kenya, and we're looking at how then do we get the country into that state of food security. We have got a policy in place on food and nutrition security. We've got programs that have been run by the government at national level, at county level, and the Israeli government is working with Kenyan government to help on this. There's something that you said that caught my attention, and this is how immediately the government and the people of Israel focused on that, food security. And currently, it's now being run majorly by the private sector. What are the lessons that then you can learn on what the government can do and how the private sector can be incentivized to invest in food security? Looking at what you've seen, you've traveled around the country. What is it that you see, the gaps that you see that the Kenyans can learn?
Well, I can tell you from Israel's experience what was one of the secrets, or the factors of success. And I think one important factor was that the Israeli government was committed to supply the basic infrastructure that is needed for the farmer to grow its crops. He had to pay for it, the farmer, but the responsibility, for example, to make sure that each and every land has intake of water, which is an infrastructure that the farmer cannot make sure that he cannot take responsibility on his own, or he cannot make sure that that type of infrastructure is being given to him. This is the commitment that the Israeli government has done. We would supply you as a farmer the basic infrastructure you need in order to develop your farm, which is intake of water, which is the roads that you need to access to the farm and to get out of the farm and to take your produce to market your produce to the market. And last but not least is, of course, the energy aspect of it. So these are the responsibilities that the government has taken upon itself. The farmer had to pay for those services, but once he was given these basic infrastructure, he could go on to develop its farm. This was one very important factor that I think is a lesson that we have learned that is very crucial. Whether it is adapted here or whether it's relevant for Kenya, I think you would know better than me.
So what you're saying is that the basic, whether it is infrastructure, which of course now relates to roads, the provision of water, all these things that would make it possible for one to actually start the business was made available.
Exactly. Roads, water, and
Energy.
Energy.
These
It was
were the
made
three
available.
components that the farmer knew that he could trust the government that would be supplied for him.
What
From
about
that
markets?
point onwards, he had to, he was on his own.
How about markets, development of markets, like the food markets around the various growing areas?
No, that was, of course, mostly the responsibility of the farmer himself. What worked for Israel and might also work for Kenya is that we, especially at the beginning, when Israel was a young country, we were mostly organized as what is known as kibbutzim, as corporates. So a group of farmers actually were grouping together to take care not only of how you develop the land, but also how you market your produce. So maybe that's another very important component of our success. At least at the beginning, the agriculture sector was organized by corporates, by kibbutzim.
Okay, but then this kibbutzim was actually now being supported by government in terms of encouraging the farmers to come together, form your kibbutz, and then now the farmers will move ahead on what they can do within the kibbutz in terms of developing their own markets.
Yeah, the kibbutz was encouraged by the government in the sense that it really gave an answer to two of the challenges that I mentioned earlier. Kibbutz was also a unit where you could secure the land that was surrounding it. You had in the kibbutz also, everyone in Israel had to go to compulsory military service. So the kibbutz also the location and the manpower in the kibbutz also served as defenders of the country. And the second aspect that they took care of is food security by developing the agriculture sector within the kibbutz.
What I hear you saying is this, that the driving force behind all the things we are mentioning is a commitment that your people have to their country, and having that commitment, and the government, whichever government it is, a commitment again to the people. And in so doing, when these two commitments combine, you then have people who work in tandem, and they're able to produce whatever they're producing. The reason why I say this is because when you say compulsory military service,
until today, by the way.
Yes.
For men and women.
Yes. I asked myself, okay, my colleagues are laughing. Imagine a situation where in this country you had compulsory military service for everybody.
Well, again, these are different situations. We can't, it's a bit dangerous to take an example from, one country and say, you have to imitate it one by one.
The reason why I mention it, we didn't have a compulsory military service, but we had a compulsory youth service.
Service.
All right? Compulsory. You get to a certain point in your education, That period before you go to university, compulsory. It was discontinued. And why I mentioned the word commitment is because if I were in power in an African country, I would be afraid. Having all these people with a military background, and I'm not certain that they support me, essentially it's like I am building up my own opposition. It's the last thing that I would encourage. That's why I talk about the commitment the people had to their country. Yes.
No, you're very right. I mean, this is a very strong component, and I think it derives from the very strong bond that I was mentioning earlier that Jews had when they came back to establish the modern Israel. We in our history faced many challenges, as we were for 2,000 years spread in the exile, away from our homeland. Today we are marking the International Holocaust Remembrance Day.
Tell us a little bit about that.
This is one of the darkest chapters in the history of humanity, where Jews were murdered. 6 million Jews were murdered by Nazi Germany. That developed the race theory that concluded under so-called research and science that the Jewish race has to be exterminated, that they have to be eradicated because they contaminate humanity. And Jews, even though they might have been converted for years, they couldn't have changed this fate, because scientifically, by this Nazi regime and based on this Nazi race theory, they should have been eradicated, because otherwise they contaminate humanity. So I think this is a very dark chapter of history, and the bright side of it, if you can find the bright side of it, is that the decision that the UN has made to mark this International Remembrance Day is that it, I think, illustrates the importance of the commitment of the international community to make sure that future genocides will not take place. And you can only do it by remembering the Holocaust and other genocides, learning the lessons, looking for the early signs of hatred and the implications of hatred, and making sure that together you fight these phenomena in order to prevent, God forbid, future genocides.
Does it fuel a lot of the current decisions that are made? The remembrance of this and the things that happened, during that time. I mean, you talked about Jews having been scattered across the world and then brought back to Israel, and then thereafter, the current decisions that are made, are they made with that remembrance in mind in terms of what is going to protect for the future?
Absolutely, yes. I think, again, if you look at the history of the Jewish people, you would see that we were challenged many times. And with God's help, we overcame those challenges. But going back to your point, I think the main lesson for us is that we must always make sure that there is an independent Israel, whereby Jews would be able to express their national identity, and in a manner that we are able to defend ourselves by ourselves. I think this is a very strong component of our identity, which drives many of the activities and initiatives and the modus operandi of the State of Israel.
Talking of the Holocaust, is there anything you have in your educational system that ensures that anyone who is born a Jew will never forget what brought about this terrible situation?
Absolutely. This is very strong in the education system in Israel. Of course, there is the most famous museum in Jerusalem called Yad Vashem that is dedicated for the remembrance of the Holocaust. In fact, I think in Israel it definitely takes place. I think I'm encouraged to see that also the international community has joined efforts together to take education and research on the Holocaust as a tool to make sure that future genocides will not take place. This was what was behind the decision of the UN to adopt a special resolution to have this International Remembrance Day of the Holocaust. This is what drives another organization, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, that was based on Stockholm 2000 Declaration. Unfortunately, we also have to fight those who insist on denying the Holocaust, and they are, accusing or claiming that this whole issue of the Holocaust was a total lie.
And they're growing, by the way. It's not as though the numbers are getting less.
Unfortunately, they are growing. Unfortunately, there is one regime, again, that leads these efforts, and that is the specific existing regime of Iran. In a very sarcastic manner today, as we are marking the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Vice President of Iran decides to visit today Kenya very sarcastically in this specific day. But I'm encouraged to see that there are many forces that are fighting against this denial, and there are many forces in countries, actually the vast majority of the countries are joining forces to remember the Holocaust, to learn and to educate the lessons of the Holocaust and other genocides.
I'm still fascinated by how humanity can actually watch by and see these things happen. The UN were present in Rwanda when the terrible things that happened in Rwanda happened. It isn't as though they were far away, and yet it happened. So when they, for whatever reason, decide to mark this day, well, it's, let me not say what I'm thinking, but let me ask this question. What do you do on a day like this to remember the day? What activities are encouraged, or what do you have on this particular day?
Well, in few hours' time, there is a special ceremony that, of course, we have to do it online because of COVID-19. A ceremony that is being organized jointly by the UN here in Nairobi, the Embassy of Israel, with representation also of the government of Kenya. So we will have a special ceremony to commemorate this day. For me, personally, I think one of the best ways to remember is to search for the stories of the individuals. We are mentioning that 6 million Jews were murdered in the Holocaust, but behind this number, there are individuals. About 1 million, more than 1 million of them were children. Many students, people at different ages with different occupations. I want to, at least, this is what I do, and I would like to encourage maybe others to go to the Yad Vashem site and search for this beautiful program of mentioning the names, lighting a candle for each name of person that was murdered in the Holocaust, and to learn who he was, what was his story. I think when you look at when you learn the history of the Holocaust or what happened in the Holocaust through the personal stories, through diaries of personal people that managed to write diaries under this horrific chapter of history, I think this is the best way to get the sense of what has happened there. And not to get the sense for the sake of the remembrance is not for the sake of remembrance. I think what is important is to remember, research, and learn for the sake of making sure that we will not have another genocide, whether it's against, God forbid, Jews, or whether it's against Africans, or whether it's against any other race or any other ethnic group.
So let me just flip the coin here. As you say, as you're remembering the Holocaust and the lessons learned, what also does the State of Israel do to promote peace? Peace among the people who live with you and peace with your neighbors. I'm talking about this, of course, with reference to the ongoing conflict with the Palestinians. Now, there's the other issues around the Middle East, and you've said the face of the Middle East is changing rapidly in the last couple of years. But in terms of promoting peace and ensuring that there's peaceful coexistence among people who are close to one another, what does the State of Israel do?
Well, it's a crucial issue for us. We want to live in peace with our neighbors, and the Palestinians are our immediate neighbors. So this is very high on our priority. Every government in Israel has extended its hand in order to find a compromise with our Palestinian neighbors to be in a manner that we could live side by side. So I think this has been in the past and will always continue to be one of the more important goals and objectives of Israel. Unfortunately, we are not there yet with the Palestinians themselves. We still have to sit down and find that way out, this compromise. For us, the crucial aspect of it is to see the leadership and the people of the Palestinian recognizing that the importance of the existence of Israel as the only place on earth that where we could express our national identity. And I think all Israelis, at least the vast majority of Israelis, understand that Palestinians are our immediate neighbors, and we have to find the way out and to reach peace with them. I'm encouraged to say that more and more countries, among those Arab countries that in the past, at least definitely 2 decades ago, we see more and more countries in the Middle East that are now normalizing their relations with Israel. So this has to continue to be our direction, and this is one of the more important goals for us, to continue to make sure that we could live securely in our homeland.
How about encouraging other people? How about encouraging other people to come and live within Israel? And I'm asking this in the context of, for example, the news that several thousands of refugees who've sought refuge in Israel could be transported out of Israel to another country. There have been talks with Rwanda and others. Why is that?
Well, I think there is a little bit of a confusion between refugees and illegal work seekers. So I think what you're referring to is truly the phenomena that took place in the last few years in Israel is more related to illegal work seekers, which we had to deal like any other country would have dealt with. In terms of accepting refugees, we did in the past. Numbers that we could accommodate, and we continue to do so. Just recently, I think the most famous and most relevant aspect that I could highlight is the way we have treated Syrians that are now still suffering civilian war. They have namely treated them medically, but very few also were being able to be absorbed. So I think this is definitely something that Israel has been done, will continue to be doing. But you also have to remember that the first and foremost, the essence of the state of Israel is to make sure that Jewish refugees are able to find home in one secured place, in the only place that they could also express their national identity. So the combination of all this, I think, brings us definitely to a point where we are accommodating and dealing with this challenge that is now spread all over the world.
But these illegal work seekers, so people who have moved into the country illegally, they're looking for better opportunities. Why would you not find a way of accommodating them, of understanding where they've come from? And I'm talking about this in the global context. A couple of years ago, so the Syrians and others from North Africa have tried to seek their way into better, greener pastures, for example, in Europe, and they are tagged as illegal immigrants. And then, the treatment of such people, despite the conditions where they've come from, despite what they've gone through, is still put under question, under spotlight globally. So when, for example, now Israel says, these are people who have come and they're illegal work seekers, and so we have got to find a neutral country which can accommodate them. Why a neutral country?
Again, I think this is a challenge and a phenomenon that many countries in the world are facing, and Israel, like every other country, is trying to accommodate it in the best manner possible. It's also an issue of volume. There's a volume of illegal work seekers that you cannot accommodate, and then it becomes a challenge on your economy and a challenge on your security. So I don't think we are immune, like other countries, from trying from making maybe mistakes, but we are doing our best, like many other countries in the world, to accommodate this challenge in the best manner possible.
Well, I mean, as we look at now the challenges that the world continues to face now, COVID-19 is one of them. And I know that in terms of an approach, you've taken a very robust approach as Israel in terms of vaccines and things like this, making sure that populations are, the population within the country is vaccinated. How is that going right now? And how have you been able to make that happen?
Well, first, to be fair, I think we are still, like most of the countries in the world, we are still facing this challenge, and we're still struggling as to what is the best way to meet this challenge. One of the important issues that all of us are facing is how do you strike this fine balance between continuing normal life and at the same time meeting the challenge. At the moment, there's still a rise in the number of people affected by this virus, but there is a hope in the sense that Israel began a very, very bold campaign of giving vaccinations to the Israeli public. We have managed very, very quickly. In a few weeks' time, we're now at the point that almost 30% of our relevant population is already has taken the vaccine. And I think this is due to two factors. The first was that we were very quick to purchase the vaccines, even before it was fully approved by the FDA. We took the risk. We bought two types of vaccines, and we made sure that it's going to be stored in Israel. And once the FDA approval was given, we began giving the vaccine. So this was factor number one. Factor number two is that the public health organizations in Israel are very effective. They've been established even the pre-independence of Israel, the first and basic one. Since then, we have more than one operator, and the digitation of the records of medical records in Israel is very, very effective. So the combination of having early enough vaccines with very effective medical operators, and with the digitation of the system, I think this is what allowed us to very quickly.
So you know exactly where all your people
Everybody
are.
is.
You more or less have a very clear idea of the demographics that relate to these people.
Yes.
Now, what
Yes. I'm here.
Yes.
And I got from my operator an SMS. Please, you're at the right age to come and you're at
get
the right
it.
age
Get
group to
yours
come and get the
done.
vaccine.
Right.
And if I'm not, if I'm not responding, I'm getting a reminder. So yes, it has been very effective. But again, I want to be fair. We are far from, all of us, I think, are far from saying this is.
We're on
Yeah,
solid
we have
ground.
one.
now.
What would you have done if the vaccine had turned out not to be what you thought they might be?
Well, first of all, future will still say. I mean, the question is still there.
Yeah.
If we are honest, I think none of us really know how effective this vaccine is. It seems to be effective, including on two mutations that were imported to Israel. So that is the interim conclusion of our experts in Israel. Let's hope it's true. But I think also we bought our vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna. I think also for them, because we have done it such in a concentrated manner, an effective manner, I think we would be for them a very interesting.
From my reading, I gathered that one of the things that the Israeli government did as part of the understanding and agreement, they allowed Pfizer Moderna to take the data, or to at least have access to the data of the vaccination process.
There would be a bit of a sharing of the data, no doubt. I think it will be a way that this could be our contribution to understanding how effective those vaccines are.
Can I ask you the last question? We saw also reports yesterday that the UN has leaned in and said, there should have been some help offered from Israel to Palestine when it did come to vaccinations, and are maybe frowning a little bit that has not and is not happening. Would you say that it is because of the challenges that Israel faces on its own before it's even able to lend a helping hand in terms of vaccinations to Palestine, or are the current frictions between the two countries contributing to that?
No, it has nothing to do with the friction. I think this is also in our interest, and I don't think it's accurate to say that there is a great amount of cooperation behind the scenes between medical authorities in Israel and medical authorities in the Palestinian Authority. But as you said, these are two separate entities. So we have purchased and bought those vaccines for the Israeli public, and the Palestinian Authority have their chance and their way to do the same thing for their own population. It's in our interest to see that happening. So a lot of our experience and a lot of issues that deal with capacity building and coordination is taking place and will continue to take place.
Mr. Oded Joseph, Ambassador of Israel to Kenya, just take a minute, give your closing remarks. Speak to the people of Kenya on behalf of the people of Israel. What would you say? What would you tell us?
I would first and foremost say that I'm very proud of our friendship. That, as I said earlier, is not only based on cooperation of mutual interest, but it's really true friendship. And I'm happy that this is the way to characterize, I think, our friendship. I see much more potential, and we could do much more to enhance this cooperation and this friendship, and that's why I'm here, and I'm very much committed to that, myself and the staff of the embassy, for the benefit of both Kenyans and Israelis. You have a beautiful country, lovely people. I enjoy every minute here. And I know that many of my colleagues are very envious of me that I'm the ambassador to.
That you're here and they're not.
Exactly. So they'll have to wait before
Let them wait their turn.
Exactly.
Enjoy your stay here for as long as
Thank
you're here.
you.
Oded Joseph, ambassador of Israel to Kenya, also representing Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, and the Seychelles. Asante sana. We hope to have you again soon.
Thank you very much. It was a truly pleasure.
Thank you
My
so
pleasure.
much.
Pleasure was ours. 3 minutes to 8 o'clock. Time for us to take a break. A quick break on KTN Home. These conversations continue on Spice FM. We are broadcasting on radio and online. Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up 87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
And taking a look at traffic, what we hear from them is the organization of the people and their government. Look at what he said about the healthcare system. Very well organized. Look at what he's talked about the agriculture sector. Very well organized. Of course, security, very well organized as well. People working and knowing that we all belong to this particular nation and all living together as a nation.
But look at what it does then. Look at what it does then in situations where you need that kind of coordination,
Yeah.
right? You have a health system that works very well together. You have a security system that works very, very well together. So then enter a situation like COVID-19. Has it been difficult for them to organize and coordinate their country? It hasn't. Because then everybody's able to work together, and then you're able to come and say, okay, look, what do we need in terms of vaccinations? Who do we need to be able to sort this out? It works very well.
Yeah.
Because everybody's coordinated, because everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. And I don't think it was rocket science to get it done, honestly.
That's true. That's very true. Keep it right here for more conversations. Now we'll be talking about COVID, what we expect to see in coming days in terms of COVID-19, and also let's talk about vaccination. So what's happening? We've heard what Israel has done. What is Kenya doing in terms of vaccine? What is Europe doing in terms of vaccine? John has come and sprayed. Hey, John, surely. Good morning. It's now 8 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic.
Sugar and spice and everything.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu.
Okay, so we have some traffic in Westlands coming off Waiaki Way and trying to get into the CBD. That's moving very, very slowly today. And then, well, here's an option. You can use the Red Hill bypass. If you're in the Westlands area, using the Red Hill bypass is going to get you where you're going quicker. Otherwise, you're going to sit in traffic on the Uhuru Highway, and that cannot be fun. All right, the current situation on Mombasa Road is that it is slow. It is not moving. Folks have been there for at least an hour. And going into the city is going to take you some time on this one. So outbound Mombasa Road, very, very slow this morning. You get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout, even slower, going on through to Westlands. So again, today is one of those days. We're in the middle of the week and things are hectic. Let's take a look in a short while and see how that might have changed. Spice FM KE on Twitter. That's how you can reach us, or text us on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation
2
Room,
minutes after 8.
the
This is
only
Kenya's
way to
biggest
start your
conversation,
day.
The Situation Room. We're back. We look at other conversations this morning. But before we do that, let's begin with the day's proverb. CT.
Wah. Proverbs. A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
Okay.
Mganga hawezi kujiganga.
You're here. Our guest for the next 2 hours is Dr. Mercy Korir, Group Editor in charge of Health and Science. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. So, in another part of East Africa, Mganga is a doctor.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, Mganga hawezi kujiganga.
Doctor
But
can
we
treat
treat
him
ourselves.
Well,
Somehow.
you know how it is. Physician, heal thyself. Do you know that one?
Nani? Nani ajigangi? Muganga. Muganga is doctor. Mchawi is the other one.
Is the other
He's
one.
the remote control expert.
So Mchawi is the diviner. Hey, okay. Mercy, karibu sana
Thank you very much,
to
Asante
the
sana.
show. And
It's
you
always
hear...
good to be here.
Yes. Now, you've heard from the Israeli ambassador whom we're hosting, Oded Joseph, and what he was talking about. He's given us now, in terms of vaccines and how they rolled out their vaccines. First of all, even before the FDA had made its decision, they had already bought some of those vaccines and said, let them come to the country. Let's just wait for the go-ahead. Go-ahead is given rollout vaccination campaign, supported very well and very much by the organized healthcare system, which has been there for very many years in terms of what do they have, what do they have from the ground, from basic healthcare to the national healthcare system. He was telling us that even when he's here in Nairobi, he's already received SMS alerts telling him, you qualify among the people who should be receiving your vaccination at this point. Please take yourself to XXX health facility. And if you don't respond, they follow up and call you again. Now, you see that picture?
I have seen it.
Okay, what do you say?
You know, devolution, taken to its logical conclusion, it's like if you come from this area,
Yeah.
one, there are schools you can go to because they're within your area. Health services the same. And they know you and they have your details. There's no hit and miss here. They even know where you are. Your age, your children, your what. They have all that. So getting hold of you, not difficult.
This is here in Kenya, I would say in a perfect world, that is what we would aspire to have. So them already, they're in a perfect world. And if you see at the evaluations that people are doing of countries that are doing vaccinations, Israel is actually at the top of the countries that are doing very well. The countries where people are saying, we need to emulate this country for what they are doing in terms of rolling out their vaccinations and making sure that all the vulnerable people are reached and you make sure that everyone is vaccinated. So in our country, we have the grand plan, but those finer details is now what you do not have.
Actually, not even finer. The fundamental details and the details that guarantee that these things work don't exist.
What is fundamental?
Fundamental is this. A health service that you can rely on. You know very well what to expect when you go to a health facility. And if it is segmented and devolved as it is, even when you go there, they already know who you are. You mention your name,
It's up there.
your data is there. So they know. And so when you talk, they listen to you from an informed position. Not this hit and miss situation where you start from scratch every time you go to see a doctor. And the history that you have, unless your doctor comes in, then, or the doctor who attends to you often enough, then they don't really know what it is that they're handling and managing. So even managing health becomes easier. Much easier.
But does it take much to get there?
No.
At least to get to the basics of such.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. If I look at the care and treatment programs that we had that were rolled out in this country for HIV, similar system. Similar.
Okay, so can we
know exactly who these people are.
So can we look at what that system looks like? Because we can say system, we can throw these words out there, and then people who are listening who may think, okay, what would it require for something like that to happen so that this thing can be rolled out smoothly? We get the information that we need. Folks go to one place or the other to get their vaccination. Because when we use these words, to people who may listen, it may sound like it's some huge database that now must be invented and created. There must be a drive going through the whole country. I mean, what would be necessary to have so you have the very basics that is needed to roll out something like this?
You know what CT is talking about, where, and this is the experience of almost everyone. When you go to hospital A, you have to start from scratch. My name is so-and-so, I come from this. This is the last time I was in hospital. Some you may not remember. People don't always even remember what was done in the hospital. When you go to hospital B, you start all over again. So the system or the situation we are talking about is one such that it does not matter whether I'm in Nairobi or I'm in Turkana. If I show up in the health facility and they key in, let's say, my identification number or my surname, any one of those, then all my data is there.
And history.
And that is information that should be shared across all the health facilities. So in the HIV system, for example, and some of these funded programs, they have the database of who is who, where they are, how old they are, their kind of household, all of this data, which would be important in a situation like now where you want to roll out an adult vaccine, because you want to know who are you over 80, for example, and where are they? Who are you over your 70? Who are the people who are living with pre-existing conditions, and where are they? Who else is within them, so that you decide, are you going to vaccinate according to family units because of the risks around it? Or are you going to just, vaccinate just age-based, healthcare workers-based, that kind of system? So that information exists in the country, but it is in silos. You find that most of our private hospitals are very good systems which speak to each other, but within the network of the private hospitals. The public hospitals is still your hard copy file where you need to give a number, then somebody goes to the record and then they peruse through the files.
Good grief.
You find the programs, HIV, TB, malaria, have their own set of system, their nutrition program. So all of this data is all over the place. So it needs something that will, bring all of this together and all of it talk to each other.
So what is that thing?
Some years ago, some
Technology.
people spent nights, I'm sure, and days at the Ministry of Health. Some people who were just experts on this, and they came up with a plan. And they said we can actually roll out this thing that connects all the hospitals countrywide. And they called it managed equipment. Well, I don't know whether that was the initial name, but it was a plan like that, which was then rolled out and called MES, where equipment was brought in. And among the components of that was that digitization and harmonization of data, which, of course, now we know what happened. But can you imagine if that had been rolled out, where every health facility in this country can actually be accessed from one central location, and you can get the information that if you're referring a patient from this health facility to another health facility, all that information is just pulled up.
Yeah, it would make life much easier. And what we've been saying is that COVID has, as Citi says, exposed the underbelly of our health system. It has exposed our weaknesses. And unfortunately, we don't seem to be learning and doing something, to change that course.
Yeah. The fact that such a plan was actually mooted, the fact that such a plan was discussed and it went above to senior managers, to the management of the Ministry of Health, to cabinet, it means it's possible.
It is, definitely.
It means it's also possible to fund such a program. It means that we could get it done.
And it also means it is not even as expensive as they'd like to make
not
it think like
it's not expensive.
It's not.
We already have, there are various other projects. There's the NOFB, the National Fiber Optic Project, that connects the entire country to a fiber optic cable. So internet and infrastructure-wise, it's possible to get it done. Those are the things that you're saying. You know, we are exposed like this, and then we shift our focus to other issues of politics, and we forget to raise those questions. Why hasn't that been rolled out? What you're talking about now, we don't have a plan and a program on COVID. It hasn't been made public. Maybe there is one.
Yeah, that's more like it.
The information.
The ministry says there's a plan.
Yeah.
They have it all out.
Everything
but
is sorted.
we need to see it.
You know, for instance, when you talk about, say, digitizing your record systems, one of the complaints that was put forward a long time ago was electricity is not available.
Yeah.
So even when electricity then became available and a backup service was provided in the form of a generator, you would still find complaints.
Yeah.
You would still find issues as to why this isn't happening and why it should. That one was standard.
It's always standard.
Standard. I mean, it's so standard. It's like ticks on a dog. You guaranteed. Now, there seems to be a mindset that anything that actually brings positive progress must be fought and removed. All these things we talk about. A biometric system, which again is not as expensive as people make it seem to be, would sort out many of these problems. All a patient needs to do is thumbprint. That's it. You already know who the person is.
Yep.
This story of sending someone half a kilometer away to go and look for the file.
Go and get your file and come with your file. And you're sick, by the way. You
Oh, no,
have
you're-
gone to hospital because you're
sick.
unwell. And then you're being told now, enda kwa ile ofisi uchukue file.
And the file is not there. Then
Enda
what do you do?
pale
file
kwa
is not
cashier.
And sometimes you don't even remember the last thing that ailed you. Because some of those things can assist the doctors to make a diagnosis or to help you. Sometimes you don't remember. Or people who, in hospitals, we have this many unknown African males, unknown African females. You know, somebody who's had an accident, for example, they can't remember who they are.
Yeah.
Nobody knows who they are.
This is an unknown African male.
Imagine if you had just a thumbprint. You'd be able to pull out their next of kin and everything like that and be able to connect them back with their families. But it's a fundamental problem with our health system that we know where the issues are, we know where the pain points are, but we are not doing anything about it. We just keep talking about this universal health coverage. We keep talking about, we want to improve healthcare, but it's just talk and talk and talk. But there's really nothing tangible that
You know
we're
what is actually
seeing.
tragic about it? What is truly tragic is that anytime you talk about these systems and these processes working, there was external assistance accorded in terms of funding. And there was an insistence by the provider that certain things must be done. Like monitoring and evaluation were a must.
Yeah.
So order had to be kept. Now, why I'm saying it's tragic is that people who seem to be in authority and decision-making positions then more or less sit back and wait for that sort of assistance to come along before anything can be done. So they'll talk, and as far as they're concerned, they've done their bit. They've talked. You only need to look at the services that ran smoothly in this country because of PEPFAR funding, and when funding was reduced, not removed.
Yeah.
You will not believe the shambles that
Night
followed.
and day.
One of them is the blood program.
Yep.
The blood program. And up to now...
What's the
we're
update
still
on that, by
struggling.
the way? So, team formed, team taken to court, team removed, team brought back in. Who's running our national blood transfusion services?
The last time I checked, I think somebody from the ministry had been assigned that to oversee... Because remember, when COVID started, one of the this first 6 billion funding on COVID, 1 billion was to go into the blood transfusion.
Yep.
So that's when all of this was there. I don't have any tangible update as yet. I just know there was a team that was already now starting to have meetings.
A team had been formed, then the CS decided, no, this team does not need to work, we'll run it straight from the ministry.
Yes. So the team from the ministry. So they've been having meetings and conversations.
Of course they have.
Yeah, but I still see people struggling to get blood.
What means I'm perplexed. What needs to happen? There seems to be so much, because you said something very interesting, is that we know what the problem is, right? And it's established that there's a problem, acceptance that there's a problem, but it seems that to move from where we've spoken and talked about the problem over and over again, and then to actually put things in place to get rid of this problem, there's something that's blocking that. What is that? And what needs to be done to remove it? Because then my next question would be, you have cases like this of COVID, and based on what we're talking about today, things would definitely get worse before they got better. If you're trying to sort out a problem and on an already ailing system, it's going to get worse.
Our main problem, usually, we talk about funding, that we don't have enough resources for this, we don't have enough funds. So we have all these grand ideas, but when it comes to implementation, we say we don't have funding. Then when we look at the budgetary allocations, it's truly not adequate. But then at the time when there's a global health crisis, who would you get that will give you donor funding for some of these programs that ideally, as a country, you should be able to be funding for yourself? For example, the blood program or the PEPFAR-funded programs, where the country knew for 15 years that this funding will come to an end at some point. So they're supposed to have, increased the funding to be commensurate with what was happening so that you maintain the services. So when it comes to all of this, it's usually when you get to the point of funding, we're like, no, we don't have funds. We need to do resource mobilization. We need to get partners, funders, donors. And the conversation continues from there. As Citi says, the programs that are funded run very well because there are some certain strict things that people have to meet. You have to see through, you have to meet all of those requirements for you to continue enjoying those funds. So those programs tend to run well.
Does Kenya need external help to sort out this COVID-19 thing? No. Does Kenya need external help to, because if we're saying, look at it, if we are saying that something as basic as getting your personal file, to come and get you treated when you are ill, that's you, one individual, and then happens all across the country. Now we are talking about a national a problem that affects the nation in all corners. You want to make sure that you are inoculating or vaccinating your most vulnerable first, those on the front line. It needs information at the same time as it needs action. It is clear that cannot be done, has not been done, is not being done. They have a problem getting it done. So do you need external help to have this sorted out? It may sound like something you don't want to admit to, but...
Before she responds, can I ask you a question? When you say external, how far do you want it to go? Do you want it to be divine, coming down?
No, divine. I think divine, we've already established that one is a necessity. But that one is a necessity. Divine help, absolutely. But look at the examples that
helped by another
about.
Human being who is not Kenyan.
Right.
Thank you, Eric.
This PEPFAR funding that you talked about, look at the things that happened when... because PEPFAR will not just give you their money. They'll give you their money, and then they will go in to ensure that whatever you said you would do with this money is done. Whether they need people to be in there monitoring and supervising, the work is done. People's lives are affected. It's done better. Now, look at this COVID. I don't know if... look at it as it is. Do you think that that's what's going to be needed to sort that out?
I get your question, but my honest answer is that I don't know. Because every country is trying to save their people. So who will come and help you to save your people?
Okay. Let me ask this other question. Now, as a medical doctor, there's always been this debate about what healthcare approach, public healthcare, should you have, the preventative versus the curative approach. And the argument, the preventative may be whatever the argument may be, all right? COVID has shown something very peculiar. Human beings are the same everywhere. Because the problems we keep talking about with reference to Kenyans, it's everywhere. Just take your pick. All the activities that Kenyans have done to sort of like disregard COVID and just do it's everywhere in the world. However, do you think that if we took a preventative approach to our public health care process, that many of these issues that we have would not exist? And now let me tell you why I am asking this question. When I was a child, I was actually a child once. When I was a child, growing up, one of the things that I witnessed, I even knew it because there were these people who were referred to extension officers. You even had health extension officers who came around to tell mothers. But they were in town as well as even rural areas. But rural areas, they're more pronounced because they would actually come to the home. And they were never in a hurry. Then there were agriculture. Those are the two I remember. But when I say health, there were these people who sprayed plants and trees with DDT, whatever it is that they spray to kill mosquitoes and what have you. Now, would that approach to healthcare be something that we could afford?
If you look at the gains that you would get in the long run from that approach, definitely it's a matter of looking at your return on investment, really. Because if you're going to invest in preventing disease, it means all the money that you would have used to cure these people when they fall sick, you've saved it. And then two, the other return on investment that you may not realize in the immediate part is that you have a healthy population. And a healthy population means that they are productive. And so your economy does well. So if you look at the West, where they have managed a lot of the communicable diseases over time, they have gotten somewhere. So as a country, what should happen, because we're still battling communicable diseases which can be prevented, we're still battling non-communicable diseases, cancer, for example, you still need both the curative aspect, is to try and, invest in both arms of healthcare, from preventive and promotive. And over time, you increase on what you're spending on your preventive and promotive, because then your curative side will go down. So it's just a matter of prioritizing and seeing what really is ailing our people. Is it diarrhea? Is it pneumonia? And we've seen that. So we expect, for example, the numbers of diarrheal diseases, upper respiratory diseases to have reduced in 2020 because people are washing their hands, people are distancing, those reduced activity. And what that will tell you is that, if you put a lot on prevention of disease, then you do not have to burden your hospitals with things that could have otherwise been managed at home. So for me, it's where we are as a country is investing in both.
It's just investing.
But with time, you are heavy on the prevention.
Let me throw in just a little mud into the situation. Let me muddy the water a little bit. According to a national household survey released by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, this is February 8th, 2019, 57% population of our country seek treatment from traditional healers and herbalists, compared to 26% who access health facilities.
67%.
No, 50.
57%. More than half of the country go to traditional healers and herbalists.
Yes.
Every 3 in 5 people.
Only 28% seek.
So if you take the statistics here, 3 of you have seen a herbalist.
Would go to a herbalist at any one time if we fell sick.
But that says something, because and from my own experience, people don't go to hospital just to be treated for that thing that has taken you. You may have a headache, you may have broken your leg, but sometimes you want somebody to talk to. You want somebody that will seem like they are doing an instant healing, some miracle. There's something else that you want. And probably the herbalist traditional healers provide, they'll tell you, if you take this, all your problems are gone for good.
No, then they take care of all your needs, actually, and they're not in a hurry. They're not looking at their clock, and usually there's somebody you know. So they are not just people who look after your immediate physical health care needs. They also look after your psychological needs and even your spiritual needs.
Now, actually, that we talk about somebody you know, I'm thinking of maybe digging deeper into that survey and finding out how do they describe these traditional healers and herbalists. Maybe it's also when you talk to a neighbor and the neighbor tells you, I used this and the other. It's also categorized in that. As in one of the reasons why somebody fell ill and they sought assistance outside of a health facility, a recognized health facility, then maybe they are lumped into that traditional healers, herbalists, friends, colleagues, elder brothers, the elders in the community, all those are categorized as one. We talk about that issue, though, of public health vis-a-vis looking at how to look at the medical side of things. Again, I'm sure you have interacted with people at the Ministry of Health. A lot of attention is put on paper on this, on preventive healthcare, on public health. A lot of experts are there, and they say, our attention should be here. At some point, was it during the Grand Coalition government, the Ministry of Health was split into two, one to focus entirely on preventive public health, and the other one now on the other side. Okay, we brought them back. But at the national level, we have a director of public health. That tells you that somewhere in Afia House, there are people who work and they think and they design programs. It moves out of there, it goes into a political office. And the political office and the commercial side of things maybe just messes up our thinking.
Public health currently is under the counties. I remember all of these things, whether from the Ministry of Health, from the county governments, all of these things need money.
Yeah.
What city is talking about your community health workers, your agricultural extension officers, those people need money.
Yep.
I've been to West Pokot, I've been to Uasin Gishu, all of those areas. And sometimes they don't have what you're talking about here, and we may laugh, but it's very serious. They don't have fuel for their boda bodas because that's the means of transport to access people. So when there's an outbreak, for example, and this time I was covering cholera, when there's an outbreak, they can't access some of those areas because there's no car that can go there, and your boda boda does not, your motorbike does not have fuel. So how are you going to reach your people? And this is not just when there's an outbreak, but it's your almost daily thing. So people go to the office, but there's nothing much to do because you haven't been facilitated to do some of these things. If you want to go and, do the spraying or, sensitize people about cutting their grass, all of these things need funding. So if you don't put money where your mouth is, you cannot expect different results.
All right, your mercy, because even before devolution, when you had district hospitals, you would find, for instance, the two individuals who are supposed to be the community officers in that particular, and I'm talking about social welfare officers, have not visited that large district in a year. And the reason is the very thing you're saying. Many a time you will actually be approached by the med soup. Simple problem, fuel for their vehicles. Because they would like to go, they would like to visit, no fuel. I remember in the county of Homa Bay, there was a small matter of visiting the islands of Remba and Ringiti. Now, the healthcare service didn't exist there, so let's just start there. Not only that, but even at a certain point in time, even a police service did not exist. So, for them to actually visit this, they would need you to provide them with a boat, which at that point that we had. Essentially, you have to take them to visit an area that they should be covering. So, yes, resources in many, many ways were not available. So you used to wonder, so if somebody falls sick here, what on earth do you do?
So what happens? Herbalist, traditional healer.
Precisely, because there'll be somebody.
It's accessible.
Yes.
Let's take a break, 29 minutes after 8, see what's happening on the roads as well as weather, and then we continue the conversation. We are looking at COVID-19 spread in the country, what needs to be done, how can this be addressed. We'll also be talking about that Kemri report that says, look, we are projecting, and according to our models, this is when we should expect the next peak. So what does that mean for us as well? Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. 24/7, around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
This week, in your Nairobian newspaper, college girl confesses to stabbing her rich grandmother over 17 times. Her father is also a person of interest. The government loses 2 billion shillings daily, but can't afford to pay medics. Nurses Association President Alfred Obengo is not happy about this. Sleep late, wake up late. Survive in January's 90 days like a ninja. Also, find out why elevated testosterone levels have made top Olympians' competitive life extra hard. For these and many more stories, grab a copy of your favorite newspaper, The Nairobian, or subscribe to the e-paper and make your week an interesting one. The Nairobian. We know where you live.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and
Right,
nostalgic
so it's,
ballads.
sunny in Nairobi, 14 degrees. We're looking at highs of 28 today. We'll see highs of 25 in Nyeri, currently sunny at 15. It's cloudy in Nakuru at 16. We'll see highs of 28, partly sunny in Eldoret at 11 with highs of 25. We're going to highs of 30 in Kisumu today, partly sunny conditions at the moment at 17. And it's partly sunny in Kakamega at 17, going to highs of 33. The highs will be 33 in Mombasa, where it's mostly sunny at the moment at 24. It's also sunny in Malindi at 23, going to highs of 31. Partly sunny in Kampala at 17, going to highs of 27 and lows of 18. We're looking at sunny conditions in Dar es Salaam today, already warming up at 28, going to highs of 32 and lows of 26. Light rain in Johannesburg this morning at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 16. It's clear in Lagos at 25, highs of 34 and lows of 24. And it's sunny in Kinshasa at 24, highs of 32 and coming back down to lows of 24.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Traffic.
It said that folks who are able to survive in Nakuru on a daily basis can face anything in this life. That's what it says, and that's what it looks like today. There's traffic in both directions today, in and out of the city. It looks like it's going to take some time today to get out of this one. It's still piled up ever since 5 a.m. this morning. Okay, coming off of Thika Road also is quite slow. Wayaki Way as well, coming off at the University Way roundabout and then towards Museum Hill if you're going back in the other direction. It's a bit slow, but not too bad. Gong Road flowing, moving not too slowly into the city. We're also looking at Jogo Road joining with Landis Road and then out into the CBD. Not too bad either. Let's look at what it looks like in a short while. We're still in traffic hour, guys. Let's see if we can make it not too bad a Wednesday morning. Spice FM KE. That's how you can reach us on Twitter or text on 40127.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice
It is
FM.
7 minutes to 9. The conversation continues. This is Spice FM, KTN Home, and Spice FM KE on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. We have in the studio with us Dr. Mercy Korir, Group Lead Editor in charge of Health and Science at the Standard Group. And we're talking about COVID-19 and the spread. In the next hour, we'll be talking about vaccination and the drive for vaccination globally and especially in the country. For now, it's about the spread of COVID-19 and the management of COVID-19. Before we talk about the Kemri report, if you just look back at COVID from last year, COVID up to this year in this country, Ministry of Health programs, what the Ministry of Health has done in terms of information, in terms of coordination at national and county level, how would we rate the ministry? Would we say that we're where we are because A, the government has done very much what it could and has even allocated extra resources into this? Or could we say that, the government has just floated on the waters?
Kwa Kiswahili wanasema mgala muwe na haki
Haki
mpe.
yake mpe.
So we'll give credit to the ministry for for the kind of thing that they've done, and I think for me the one thing that stood out was taking charge of leadership of the pandemic. That in itself, when the emergency response committee was set up, that whole committee, it signaled that we are taking this seriously, and there is a channel in which this coordination mechanism, in which the fight against COVID would be done. And that's important because when you have many centers of power, then you will tend to have many people doing their own things.
Yeah.
So for me, that was the one thing that I think the government, the Ministry of Health got right, because then you are able to coordinate both at the national and the county level. Initially, when we had the call center, for example, where people could call in to find information, the regular updates.
We no longer have that?
Well,
Is it functioning?
yeah, that's the question.
Was it there?
Yes.
initially.
Yes.
Yes.
And it was 24-hour manned, and you could get
Yes.
through and you could
Yeah.
call and ask.
Yes, because
Right.
it was manned by doctors,
Mm-hmm.
doctors and medics. Really, there was a whole good system, and even up to a referral system where if you need if you need an ambulance, if you need to be evacuated, that was there. And at least I saw that they were actually responding. And it was interesting because at the time, even people called for things that are not even COVID related. I remember one of the times when I was there's a lady who called because she didn't have food for her children. And so she was referred to where she could get food under the Red Cross. So it was really working, not just addressing COVID issues, but other, concerns that people had. So for me, that was a big plus. The regular updates, by the ministry that this is what is happening, these are the numbers. Just ignore the kind of information that was there because
Ignore the detail.
we had a lot of issues. And anyway, that is the work of the fourth estate to ask questions. But that in itself was a plus because all of us were on the same boat as a country in that we know this is where we are, these are the numbers, this is where we want to go, this is what we think we should do. And that helps for you to rally people around you. Now, the details is where we had all the issues. When it came to, for me personally, issues of charging for isolation, for example, issues of charging for testing, because that's where you get it wrong. Because if I don't have money and I have COVID, I will stay at home or I will continue, looking for my bread and butter and I will spread the disease. And so that is the part where I think we started getting it wrong by charging people for testing, for isolation and treatment, by not initiating home-based quarantine from the very start. Because we had seen from other countries that, this disease people could quarantine at home. But then we had people being quarantined in hotels and in institutions where they had to pay. And in these institutions, there was really nothing much that they were doing. So I think that is where we started getting it wrong. The other part is where we were not safeguarding our healthcare workers by providing them with proper personal protective equipment, where people were using one mask for the whole week, or, you're only given 2 masks for the whole week. So you have to rewind. You have to find innovative ways of recycling your mask, where some people gloves were expensive at some point. Hospitals could not afford gloves. And this is our public institution. So some of these things, we got them wrong at that point, and that could have contributed to the numbers as we saw them. Luckily, and this has been the story in the whole of Africa, it hasn't been as bad as we thought it would have been, despite all the shortcomings that we
had been told to anticipate it might be.
Yeah. So, I think God cannot punish you twice.
Explain, please.
You have a disease, you have a bad health system and everything. He cannot come and then make it decimate
You know what I've just heard you say?
What?
The first punishment is being born in Africa.
Oh, no. No. The first punishment is that you have a bad health system and then a disease has come. He cannot now make it worse.
Let me ask the question. I'm moving away from what we've been talking about. When we talked about it, we'll probably talk about it later, when we talked about the strike of the healthcare workers, the thing that struck with me was the lack or the unavailability of protective gear. Has that in any way changed?
I think it has. And at
I
least
mean, for the better, not
Yes.
it could change for the worse. I mean, for the better. Yes.
No, it has definitely improved. And the improvements here is because we started seeing local manufacturing. That actually played a big part in seeing the changes that we saw. And then also, over time, we learned a lot about the virus that you could actually do with proper gloves, a proper mask, and if you have a visor or your goggles and you have your boots, you can be okay. You don't have the spacesuit or the hazmat. And so we've seen with that there's been an improvement, so that these full hazmat suits, you just leave them for the people who are in direct isolation centers, and these other people who are meeting these patients in these other areas, you make sure they have a certain degree of protection. And then over time, also hospitals planned their patient flow so that those who are coming to COVID are not in contact with these other people, so that you're able to balance how you're going to use your personal protective equipment. So it has improved, definitely, with us learning the nature of the virus. And then if it's any consolation to the country, we are not the only ones struggling with personal protective equipment. We saw the US, for example, and now with the change of administration, they are talking about, ramping up the production of some of these personal protective equipment, which also the frontline healthcare workers were running short of at some point, that they didn't have gloves, they didn't have masks, something unheard of for a first world country. So it wasn't really unique for us, but when we saw local solutions coming up, then there was some improvement along the way. But we can do better, definitely, but we're not as bad as we were, at the very beginning. And I don't know why. Maybe people were hoarding the personal protective equipment. I don't know. Maybe people were...
But didn't we read that a good portion of the protective equipment that had come into Kenya were when some go down somewhere waiting some approval from someone so that they could actually be released?
There was an investigation which was holding
taking place forever. And, so, I mean, when it comes to discussing protective equipment, the stories around it, they're mind-boggling.
We can write a book about it.
Yes, you can. You can even make a movie.
Because the probe is still ongoing. Yesterday, KEMSA was in Parliament. Was it KEMSA? There was a conversation on that. So
that we expect. They will go to
ongoing.
Parliament. They may even go, Parliament as in National Assembly, they may even go to the Senate.
They've already done that.
Remember, even the Senate did something better. They even wrote a report.
That was the MES. The Senate report
MES
on KEMSA is still...
It's still work in
Well,
progress.
Still waiting.
There's a health committee report from the National Assembly on KEMSA. We expect many more reports.
That is why I mentioned the MES one, because people who are under investigation visit these two august houses. Yes, but if we're talking about a diviner, this one I can divine.
Really? What sayest thou?
I can actually say that they will go, they will meet, a report will be written.
And then they'll get to the next tender.
Yes.
Oh, you're done. Okay. So that's the situation. That's the situation that we're looking at now. And I mean, so here we are, a week to maybe 2 weeks to when these vaccines, because let's come back to COVID, to when these vaccines are supposed to be making their way into the country. I mean, and I know that we had looked at a Wednesday before last week when this announcement was then supposed to be made, and then now the information was supposed to be spread out into the country in terms of what was supposed to be to have happened. Okay, well, even that report did not. At least it was not made public. So maybe the information has been left to the committee that's dealing with that right now. But so as people, as citizens, what should we do from your point of view when something is supposed to be coming into the country that is going to benefit them? So do people just wait twiddling their thumbs and wait for the information to come, and then when we're told it's this day, then we go? Or is there some kind of mental preparation that people should be going through? What would you advise? Knowing that you have an authority that should be giving this information, it's not. Okay? Like, for example, Israel, we spoke to this morning. People knew what they were supposed to be doing. When, where, when, how, what. They knew. That information was shared. Even in the United States, where things are a little bit, up and down, people have a general idea of what is supposed to be happening as far as these vaccines are concerned, right? What? Should people be prepared, or should people just wait?
It's a difficult question, because without knowing what we are waiting for, it's difficult to know. Because even personally, I'm not to be pessimistic, but the February target to me seems like a very ambitious plan, seeing what is happening globally. So I don't know, from that in itself, I don't know how possible that is. But maybe the Ministry of Health knows something we don't know. I don't know. But for me, the advice to Kenyans is, where we are now, just protect yourself from getting the disease. Wear your mask, wash your hands, distance, don't go to political rallies, or places that are crowded. Just protect yourself
Do
from
the
getting.
best you can.
Yes, not to get the disease.
But Ndu, when you say what should we be preparing for, what do you have in mind in terms of what?
Well, I mean, look at it. What was it? Look at when we talked about quarantine and isolation, is that if you had somebody in your home who was presenting with symptoms or then who was found to be infected, you kind of knew what to do. Do you? And before they announced self-quarantine, you kind of knew, okay, I can speak to somebody and I know that I need to take this person to this quarantine facility, right? So you had an idea. So right now, you know whether you are a health worker, you know whether you are a vulnerable person, whether you are predisposed because of your age, you know. So should you be prepared? And so, since we know that these are the first set of people that will get, so you know, come February, I know that I need to go to this place or the other. So should it be there should be some kind of information right now saying if you fall into 1, 2, 3, be preparing yourself for the next couple of weeks to know that you should go and get your vaccine, and that in the next 3 months, 10 weeks, whatever, you should go and get the second one.
Okay. So when it came to isolation, quarantine, quarantine, for example, that's not something that needed government intervention as such, because this was from an individual perspective. Like, for example, if you're told you stay at home, don't interact with people, that is something you can do by yourself. But here, when you're talking about the vaccine, unfortunately, this is not something that you can procure for yourself. It's not, okay, maybe some people can, I don't know. But it's not something that your regular Kenyan can go and get for themselves. That's one. 2, it needs a certain supply chain mechanism. Because if you need to store it in a fridge, as in there's a process in which it needs to come in. There's a process in which it needs to be distributed. So that in itself is information that should be there. But now this is for the people who will be actively, distributing the vaccine. Then the other thing is we don't know whether it, for example, you'll start from Nairobi, Mombasa, and then if you're starting from Nairobi, what will be your centers? Is it a drive-through? Somewhere? Is it come and queue at Kenyatta? These are some of the information that you need. And then from there, once you know where is when, maybe come in the morning, or it will be throughout the day, or after you get your first dose, you need to come back after 3 weeks, 4 weeks at this particular facility, or we'll come to your home now that we have your details. These are all information that we don't have to tell people now. You need to prepare. If we had this information, then we'd say anyone over 70, the government is saying, at this and this date, go and queue at this particular place, or you wait, we'll come to where you are. We don't have that information. It's difficult to say prepare.
But Mercy, even if we were to roll it out, do we even have the personnel to do this? Because remember, even as you're vaccinating, normal healthcare services are to go on. So my question, do we have the personnel?
These are all the balls that are in the air that are making the government not be able to communicate at this point. Number one, the government maybe is not 100% sure when it's going to be able to secure the COVID vaccines and to get them in the country. So now it starts telling the people, be ready for when?
Eric,
for March, for April, for February, for March.
Add to this conversation by asking this question. Why is the government not sure? The government is very sure about how they want to tax us. They are very sure about how much they collect. They're very sure.
Yeah, they're in charge of that infrastructure.
Now,
you are there and they know how they'll get
you. They know exactly how they're going to get me. Now, you're telling me that a government that is that diligent in collecting taxes is not diligent in trying to tell us how it is. We know the vaccine has to be procured. We know this. The government collects money. So it's not that it doesn't have money. It has money. Because they collect taxes daily. Are you telling me that they're not capable of prioritizing and saying, folks, with this money that we're collecting, this is what we're going to do?
No, I think they and I'm not holding brief for government here. I'm just thinking all those priorities and everything is in place. But look at the lessons learned and taken during the address of COVID-19 in the last 1 year. International supply chain. Are we able to tell when we are going to receive the next testing kits? Are we able to tell when we are going to receive the next reagents? Are we able to? So yes, we are making all the efforts, but then things are happening.
Do we actually know where they're making all the efforts? I mean, look.
No, this is what I'm saying. I'm just saying. I'm thinking. Plan, according to what the CS for Health has said, our plan is to try and procure these vaccines or the vaccines are in the country by February.
Mid-February.
So
2 weeks.
mid-February, okay? Or thereabouts. That is their plan. And then now you go to the reality. Vituko ground. Okay,
Default.
ground. Where is it? We are getting ours from Oxford. As to the, okay, how are we going to be able to procure and secure these ones that are coming in? These are part of the global vaccine initiative. Everybody else is receiving them at the same time. Are we going to be receiving ours within the timelines that we stipulated? Are we in control of that? If the government is not in control of all these things, then now it's
Eric, I'm
gets to that
saying they're in
reality.
control. You know, I'm saying they're in control. We are not inventing vaccinations, and neither are we inventing the process of vaccinating. The Ministry of Health has programs. And they're timed. You know, this is what they're going to do with TB. This is what they have it. And believe me, it is rolled out, it is conducted, it is done. It's not that we don't know. And it isn't that we haven't done these things before. We have.
That's true.
And, you know, and the beauty of the COVID vaccine is that we are seeing what is happening in the US, in the UK, in Israel. We are seeing. You don't have to
the
reinvent the
logistical
wheel.
nightmare in other parts of the country. We are also seeing that.
No. Let's pick an example.
Let's say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home because they've got to switch programming. 8 minutes to 9 o'clock. We want to say thank you to KTN Home for joining us in 7 o'clock. These conversations happen every weekday morning, Monday to Friday on Spice FM. If you're in Nairobi, tune in to 94.4. Mombasa, it's 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu and the region. The region around Eldoret is 96.7, 96.0 in Nakuru, Nyeri 90.9, and Malindi is 97.7. We'll be live again on KTN Home tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. But you'll also be able to join us throughout the show on Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Have a lovely day. This conversation continues on Spice.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM. Nyeri. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings
You guys are
done
saying the
right.
government knows stuff.
Look, not only
Stuff,
does
be
it
specific.
know, Eric, this country does not suffer from a human resource deficit. It's not the problem we have.
Yeah.
We have many other problems, but that one we don't have.
Yes.
So, whether it's in the healthcare sector, the fact that we have many trained doctors, many trained nurses, many trained lab technicians, many trained community health, many trained teachers, many trained, you name it, and that they're unemployed, that is the problem, but they exist. It's not as though we have to go looking for them. They actually exist. That the government collects money daily, that the government actually has money, that the government is able to do the things that we're saying, that even isn't the issue. They are able to. We're going back to that tired old recycled story of what the government does. And unfortunately, these things that the government does or what we see it to do are the things we would rather they didn't do because it doesn't help us. For instance, talking about the problem as though that's the solution is not useful because they will talk. They'll tell you about plans. And then you'll wait. And then you'll hear more talk and more solutions. And then you will sit back. And then again, they say it's
a vicious cycle.
yeah, it happens all the time. What I would rather discuss personally, or what I would rather look at, are low-hanging fruits which are simple, all right? And that one begins with me asking the government, how can we help you? Because clearly, you are not in a position to help us. So, as a responsible citizen, I have to ask the question, how can we help you?
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
You asked them the same question
Wear
again
masks.
last year.
I asked it, yes, I was a bit dramatic when I asked it then because it struck me as odd then, but I was thinking, goodness gracious me, this vicious cycle which just never ends. Now I'm asking it in sort of voice, a little low toned, and I'm saying, how can we help you?
Talk to those big nations to make sure that they give us the vaccine.
So that's the conversation globally because as at yesternight, Kenyan night, the U.S. Joe Biden president was announcing that they need to get 200 million more doses for their citizens, and that would take their target to 600 million. That means everyone in the U.S. has been vaccinated. You come to the EU and the countries in Europe, everyone is looking at, vaccinating everyone.
Yeah.
And this was the address, I think we talked about this sometime last week, by Dr. Tedros, the Director General of WHO, that we are just exposing the iniquity and inequality in the world, the injustice in a way, where
But the
you have...
iniquity is quite correct because
Yeah.
iniquity also follows. We also see the iniquity that arises from all this.
Yeah, where the rich countries are, safeguarding all their population, everyone in the population. But then in the African continent, for example, I think it's only one country that has had 29 doses. Everyone else is still waiting. And there's somebody did a very beautiful map about vaccine distribution, and Africa is just blank, and everyone else is almost even done with
Getting
round
their
2 of their
vaccines,
population.
And then look at the price.
But consider, we were with the Israeli ambassador here, and we were talking about the same thing. It's in the public domain. The vaccines that they procured are waiting the approval. It wasn't blind, that is for sure. They had good knowledge about it, and the likelihood of it being... They knew all this. But part of the purchase was offset
Even better.
No, it was offset actually. No, offset by their understanding, and I brought it up, of data that was collected from the process of vaccination being used by the company that had developed it. You see?
Okay.
Now, the question is, if you look at the negotiations we have, and the agreements we arrive at, we discuss it all the time. You have an agreement, you wonder, how did we get to this one here? The people who went to negotiate on our behalf, how did they arrive at this? Because what comes out at the end of our negotiation usually, what is not central is the benefit of the so-called Mwananchi. It's not central to that discussion.
I hear what you're saying, CT, but at the same time, I don't think that's one of the key reasons why African countries are not able to access these vaccines at this point, or
Why?
even the costs. Look, the Oxford one, it's been developed in partnership with Kenya. So
Kenya is among the countries
you can
where...
say
yes.
you can
It's
say
trying.
that Kenya is already on that table and talking about let's develop this and how shall we benefit. Okay, but now look at what's the cost. At what cost are European countries and other countries getting this same vaccine? At what cost are you guys getting?
$4 versus $7.
Yes.
Why?
So even if you say those $3 are the data, why are we paying at $4?
Eric, when we spoke to the EU ambassador, here, in this, here,
Yeah.
what did he say?
Oh, they'll make sure that this and the
We asked the
Available to
question,
everybody
when you
and
get it, will we
prices
get it
that
at the
they
same
can
time? And
afford.
he
we'll
said,
get it at the same
yes.
time.
We asked it.
Yeah.
But Eric, the point I'm trying to make is, are we sure that we haven't used that nexus we have to bargain and say, folks, we're responsible also for some of this
Of
data
these
that you
things.
have. So this is what we need to consider.
I don't know.
Neither do I.
Okay. So
These
let's
are
get
not
to the
things
top
that
of
are
the
ever
hour.
in the public domain, and we never get to discuss them, so we don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know.
We'll have this conversation into the next hour about vaccine nationalism, what's happening in accessing vaccine for third world banana republic countries, as CT calls us. Good morning, it's 9 o'clock. Let's see what's happening on the roads.
Sugar and spice and everything I Spice FM.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM. Nairobi. Traffic.
Okay, Mombasa Road outbound from Airtel looks really good today. Not too bad right now. However, going in the direction of the city, that is quite slow. It's taking its time getting out here. Let's see. Also, getting into the CBD from the Nyeri Stadium roundabout on Uhuru Highway, that also slows down just a little bit. It's looking a little bit better getting off of Thika Road. As you get into the CBD, you'll slow down a little bit right around Tomboya. You can use Wangari Maathai, however. So in about half an hour or so, things should stave off and not look so bad. And we'll still see pockets of traffic through the morning, especially where the construction on the expressway continues. So please, guys, be careful whichever way you look at it. Remember that the eastern and southern bypasses you can use, looking really good, as well as the Red Hill bypass as well. Okay? Spice FMKE, that's how you can get in touch with us on Twitter or text on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Okay, it's 2 minutes after 9. We will be discussing vaccine nationalism shortly after being reminded by CT of today's proverb.
Okay. All right. Here we go.
Let's go. Here.
A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future.
Yep.
Sawa.
Why is that the case, by the way? If you're able to see for other
So
people, why
it's very
can't you see
unfair. Yeah.
for yourself?
The question you're actually asking is, can they actually genuinely divine?
Or not about being objective?
Can they actually divine? You see, you ask the question, and you know, if I give an example, it'll be political. And so I will wait until the end of the program to
give this.
Yeah.
Yes.
But we used to have rainmakers. They were able to,
No.
so they isn't
No,
that part of?
they were not rainmakers.
They were what?
There are those who argue they were not, because what many people don't understand is traditionally there are people who could understand.
Astrologers.
Yes, they could figure out that when this happens and then the other, it's about rain. In olden times, when people went to be cured in the community I come from, there were incisions that were made on your back or on your arm or wherever it is. Well, some of
Wherever
them
you
were
have a
rites of
problem.
passage, but then there was some concoction of something which was either burnt or smeared or whatever that then would be applied. Sometimes it went bad, and of course, when it healed, it left all sorts of
Marks.
Now, my late grandmother could tell when it was going to rain because those marks on her back would itch. And she would say, it's about to rain. And she was, and I would ask her, I said, every time the points at which the incisions had been made, when they begin to itch, I know it's about to rain. And lo and behold, it was
rained.
true. It would rain. So, birds can tell.
Yes.
Animals can tell. The weather changes, the body feels.
Even us, you can tell. Hii jua ni ya mvua.
And we say it accurately. This rain, this sun.
This
it's
sun.
too
For
hot.
rain.
Yes. It's not
Nyamvua.
just sun, it's rain sun.
Hii ni rain sun. Hii jua ni ya mvua. So we're all rainmakers in our own way. So coming back to the conversation about vaccines and what's happening globally, we had a conversation with the Israeli ambassador, give us what they're doing. We've seen conversations globally about the access to these vaccines from the various companies that are producing them and various countries that are purchasing, those that are producing locally for their own consumption. This was raised last year also by the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus, when he cautioned about vaccine nationalism. And this is what he said.
In the coming months, we In the coming months, we all hope to have good news about a vaccine for COVID-19. But if and when we have an effective vaccine, we must also use it effectively. In time, as production increases, we want all people everywhere to have access to vaccines. But initially, when supply is limited, priority must be given to vaccinating essential workers and those most at risk, including older people and those with underlying conditions. In other words, the first priority must be to vaccinate some people in all countries rather than all people in some countries. This is not just a moral imperative and a public health imperative, it's also an economic imperative. In our interconnected world, if people in low and middle income countries miss out on vaccines, the virus will continue to kill and the economic recovery globally will be delayed. Using vaccines as a global public good is in the national interest of each and every country. Vaccine nationalism will prolong the pandemic, not shorten it.
All right. He says vaccine nationalism will prolong the pandemic and not shorten it. Then what has happened since then? Well, since that time when countries started saying we have achieved a certain success in terms of production of our vaccine. Russia, China, and then America and Europe, and then UK, and all those. Now we have various companies in various countries that are producing this vaccine. And there's a whole global conversation about access to vaccine.
But that's exactly what's happening. Because everybody is trying to grab it for themselves. Look at the huge numbers that we're seeing some countries ordering. We've talked about the fact that the US at some point wants to make sure that they've gotten to 600 million doses.
Yep.
By the time the US alone is doing 600 million doses and putting pressure, you can imagine, you're putting pressure on that accelerator of these
Pfizer
manufacturers
and Moderna.
to say we need 600 million. Do you really believe that Pfizer and Moderna is going to listen to Guinea Republic or
Kenya.
Congo Brazzaville or Kenya and say, yeah, well, we'd like 20 million if you don't mind? Really? But that's exactly what's happening right now. The very same thing that we're warned about just a couple of months ago is playing out right now. Number one, how difficult would it be to tell countries, well, you know what, guys, we need to share. Everybody needs to have an equal chance at the table. Is that really going to happen? You have countries who their modus operandi is to pursue anything that is likened to state sovereignty.
Yep.
Me, us, we, now. They're not thinking about the rest of the world. No matter how much they say it's a global village, everybody's thinking about what they need now. America, 600 million. Boom, we need that. The UK, 100 million. That's what we need. Germany, Italy, France, Spain. Everybody's coming and saying, this is what we need. Do you think anybody's actually sitting back and saying, well, you know what? We need 600 million. But okay, let's take 300 million so that Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania can have.
So we can vaccinate
Really?
the global.
But
at the
why
same
should
time.
they?
And you cannot.
I mean, why
fault-
should
You can't force
You
them to
can't
say
fault
not
them.
to.
And you can't fault
Actually,
them.
no, but even then, why should they?
Why
If
should-
they are looking after
Their own interests, which
Yes,
is how they
what
operate
should do,
anyway.
and that's what governments are supposed
Exactly.
to do. The question I'm asking is why aren't our government doing
What
the same?
stops us from being just as bullish as these other countries when it comes to what our needs and demands are for our people? Why can't we be just as bullish?
So
the truth of the matter is that
we
how these
tell,
people
we
how
tell
they
Pfizer we want 600 million doses.
that's why I'm saying
don't
it's
even need
difficult.
we don't have
We
Pfizer.
need-
No, we don't need
No,
any-
we don't need
We
Pfizer.
don't, we don't even need 600 million.
We don't need 600 million.
We
Okay,
just
let's
need- we just
let's
need
talk
about
about the
30 million.
Let's talk about the 80 million that we would need. 49 times 2, about 90 something million. Okay, so who is this that we're going to tell we need 94 million doses?
By the time they were coming and doing feasibility study here in the country, you just said it yourself. You had a seat at the table when you were talking about how they were looking into the research of how we're going to come about and test people.
Yep.
At that point, why was the conversation not being had? You know what? Since there are people here upon which these trials are taking place, look here, this thing is going to come out and we would like, at this point,
as part of
this, let's negotiate from this point. We have 90 million needs in terms of vaccines. We want as well. Why is it always, okay, you've done the trial here. All right, we'll wait and see how many you can give us. No.
Serikali saidia.
step on the
Is
accelerator.
that the
And
situation?
that's the
Do you
problem
feel
that-
that's the situation that we are in?
Yes.
Because
Is it
no
not
one else
possible
has
that it
come
could
out
be the
with
other
an
way around?
explanation
There's-
to tell
is there
us what
something
we
else?
agreed on.
Yeah.
This one, open season, we are coming up with the most interesting scenarios we can come up with.
You don't give information, you create a vacuum. People are going to speculate and come up with their own. And that's what I've done. I've come up with my own. It is because you didn't come out and say, these are our needs. This is what we want. We have the money. We are ready
Do
to
you know
pay.
where the Oxford vaccine, do you know the country which produces most of these vaccines for them? India.
India. Actually, they're the ones who still produce a lot
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
a bigger chunk of the Oxford
Yes,
AstraZeneca.
India. And that's why, much as Pakistan have decided to go with the Oxford vaccine, they're having a bit of a problem. Because they also have a bit of a problem with India.
India.
Because they're not really talking to India at the moment.
Yes.
So, I mean, how
So
are they
even
going to
on
go
this
and say
vaccine
that-
thing, how are they going to talk now when they don't ordinarily talk? Okay?
The-
Now, we've had a relationship, Cambridge has had a relationship with Oxford for the longest time. There's a center, the Khalifi Center, that we have, the Cambridge Khalifi Center, was sponsored and funded, still is, for the longest time by
By the
Oxford.
Wellcome Trust.
You're talking about relationships. We've had it for a really, really, really long time. That discussion about what we should get from participating was, I'm sure it was had.
I'm sure of it.
I'm certain it was had.
Yeah.
But what I'm also certain is we're not going to be told.
This detail.
This is actually what we discussed because it was out in the open. It's about COVID and we want to have it.
Yep.
And your people will participate.
Yep.
Fine. They're representative of the rest of the country. Okay? So how do we benefit? You see, in research, Eric, it's a fundamental question because it is part of the pillars of research ethics. It's called beneficence.
Surely. Doc, do you think that by the time Pfizer was having these conversations, because Pfizer is usually the go-to company for the United States, do you think that by the time they started these trials, don't you think it is at that time that countries like the United States were having conversations
They
about
were.
when this thing is ready,
Countries
we
booked
want?
well in advance. Countries booked millions and millions of doses. Like, if it goes through, this is what I've pre-booked.
Yes.
So people pre-booked.
And they were using
early.
their muscle. They were using their muscle, both political muscle and financial muscle, which
Yeah.
is why Dr. Gabriel Jesus was actually talking. It's because it was something that was happening. You can already observe and see countries ganging together and saying, so we are going to support you, we're going to put in money into the development of the vaccine, and this is what we're going to get out of it. In some countries, even, remember the Trump administration, even trying to buy out some companies.
Eric, I wouldn't say ganging up. If no, allow me to be the devil's advocate. If I'm the US, if I'm EU, I fund this global bodies,
Vaccine initiative.
and vaccine initiative, and all of those people. He who pays the piper calls the tune.
Of course.
And these are my taxpayers. They have put in money. As a government of that country, my taxpayers come first.
Yes,
and
that's-
so
that's
I
true.
wouldn't fault them
But then
for
there's the
pre-booking.
other side.
No. Let me finish. I wouldn't fault them for pre-booking.
Neither am I.
The vaccines.
Neither am
That
I.
is well within their remit.
Neither am I.
Now that is where the COVAX conversation started, and it was, okay, when we do all of these vaccines, at least for the low and middle income countries, let's have 20% of their populations covered. And that's why Kenya is talking about 24 million doses to cover about, 10 million people. 24 million. So at least there was now that conversation and people putting money in there. But now the challenge is, yes, you have all this earmarked, countries are waiting, but the doses of the vaccine are just not there.
It's not coming.
Yeah, because you can imagine you need to do production at a level that you've never done before. And I was listening to the Pfizer CEO. They had to put in billions and billions of dollars for them to be able to set up different kind of manufacturing units to have this storage. So there's a lot of all of those things going on in the background for you to just produce the vaccinations.
Yeah.
So for me, the conversation here is, and where Dr. Tedros is coming in, that, okay, fine. When you have vaccinated your vulnerable population, your frontline workers, be it teachers, healthcare workers, security personnel, can we now, when you've reached that threshold, can we now start vaccinating the most vulnerable in Africa? And for me now, that is a conversation that should be there, but not that, okay, stop vaccinating or reduce your vaccinations to come to us. No, we don't have money. Unless we have money and the muscle to go and negotiate.
There's also
Pambane
what
na
is there's
Elliot.
also what is called, you know, from a global context. There's how you look at human beings as human beings. The reason why we talk about cartels, it's not that cartels are criminal. Cartels just form because people with certain business interests are coming together to protect their business interests. They are not doing anything criminal, but they've just ganged up together. And I'm using the word ganged up deliberately. They've just ganged together and
Can
they're
you use
protecting.
cartel and not criminal in the same sentence?
Yeah, because they're not.
The evolution of the
They're
word
not.
cartel, unfortunately, has negative connotations.
Of course.
Unfortunately. But remember, the word first came into being with regards to OPEC
Yep.
in the 1970s.
Yep.
That's when,
Oil
because
producing cartel.
Because we
yes.
are in this club of countries that have this resource.
together to
Let's
protect
come
your
together
interests.
to protect our
Even in the
interests.
local
sound
country, when you talk about, you know, oil marketing cartels, marketing companies coming together and then they want to sort of look at how can they protect their market, it's cartel.
you know,
They can justify that by saying, you know what, we are in business. We are looking at our bottom line. Our shareholders want a return. So that's what we're trying to do to see how we can maximize. But then government comes in place and tells them, at the same time, the consumer has a right. So you've got to think about the consumer as well. It's the same thing. So globally, big countries, political and financial, they come together and they see, so we're going to support the production of vaccines. We're going to support the development, the research around vaccine. And yes, we commit. And that's why they were coming to commit and saying, under COVAX, 20% shall go to, you know, these least developed countries and all and the other. But the devil is in the detail. At what point shall you release this 20%? And can you say that until I'm satisfied, I cannot let you have? No, we should have a conversation around release in certain phases.
You know, remember, the decisions that we are speaking about are not made by health practitioners or even scientists to a large degree. They're made by either business owners or they're made by governments. And in all honesty, the government any government around the world will, unless only a very irresponsible government would not want to focus on their own people.
Yeah.
However, the voice that is often listened to is not one of the humane considerations, but rather perhaps of the business benefits.
Yeah.
Now, those who have been looking at COVID and the economic impact it has, have argued. In fact, many have argued, but I'm going to quote one such organization, that is Oxfam, okay? In 2020, okay? They estimated that it would cost $25 billion to supply lower income countries with vaccines. Okay? However, there is the understanding that there is a reason why that would benefit the other countries economically, for trade reasons. One, if you have nations whom you trade with and whom you have relations with, and they do not benefit from this, then once again, the cost lies not so much in what you plan to gain, but what you stand to lose. Because if they are not healthy, their whole thinking will also focus not on trade, but on what they would need to actually
Survive.
stay afloat and to survive. But let me take it further. Why does this mic keep moving away from me when I
I
have to
don't
talk
know.
through it? Okay. But they also estimate that there would be a benefit to cost ratio of 4.8 to 1. Meaning, if they spent that money, they would stand to gain. And what they stood to lose in terms of US dollars would be $119 billion per year. If you look at all the economic benefits. So it is 25 billion you spend, but
lose
if you
19.
don't, you lose 119. That's according to Oxfam, all right? Sometimes people look at these figures and they perhaps don't want to consider them because sometimes the urgent consideration is not even economic, because economic could be even in the long term. But it's, if I'm a politician, what sort of decisions would benefit me the most? If I'm a business person, what would benefit me the most? How do I recoup the cost of having developed this particular vaccine?
Yeah.
I recoup it by selling it to people who can afford to buy it.
First of all.
First of all, when they have bought it, and I can feel fine, then I can be philanthropic.
So first of all, break even.
Break even and at least get to the point where this isn't an issue, because I also have shareholders.
Yeah. Reduce the financial
looking at
strain
their
and
wealth.
outflow.
Yes,
And then
yes.
okay. 20 minutes after 9, we'd like you to join the conversation as well. 0719 012 600. 0719 012 600. Let's take a look at the weather and pick up your calls as we continue the conversation on vaccine nationalism.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Well, all right then. Partly sunny conditions in Nairobi at the moment at 16. We're going to highs of 27 and lows of 14 today. Sunny conditions in Nyeri, highs of 17, lows of 11. Going to highs of 25 today. We'll only see a high of 28 in Nakuru. Cloudy at the moment, however, at 18. And 16 degrees is mostly sunny in Eldoret. Highs of 25 and lows of 12. It's partly sunny in Kisumu at 21. Highs of 30 and lows of 19. Kakamega is sunny at 21. Highs of 33 and lows of 13. And it's sunny in Mombasa as well at 26. Going to highs of 32 and lows of 24. The low will be 25, which is what it currently is in Malindi, and mostly sunny. Sunny conditions in Kampala at 21, highs of 27 and lows of 17. 29 is what it is in Dar es Salaam, and mostly sunny, highs of 32 and lows of 26. We're looking at light rain in Johannesburg at 17, highs of 23 and lows of 17. It's sunny in Lagos at 25, highs of 34 and lows of 24. And it's also partly sunny in Kinshasa at 24. There's a high chance of rain this morning, going to highs of 32 and lows of 24. It's warming up in Beijing. It's now 3 degrees and sunny. It'll go to highs of 4 and lows of -8. And it's also cloudy in Paris at 3 degrees, highs of 10 and lows of 8. Same thing in London, mostly cloudy conditions at 8. That'll be the low, going to highs of 10. And it's now Wednesday morning in New York, 2 degrees, cloudy conditions, highs of 5 and lows of -1.
Spice and everything nice. All right. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Nice figures, nice study done by Oxfam, and what the financial, economic, and political benefits of thinking yourself first and others second, or vice versa. What would be the ideal scenario then in this particular case? We're talking about something that's real. We have vaccines that need to be distributed globally.
You see, it's a question of what you think really is the ultimate priority. When I say ultimate, because you're balancing vaccine production, development, distribution, and you're balancing it with what I would call economic disruption globally. Because that is precisely what COVID has done. It has disrupted. Now, if you don't halt this progression, then the disruption continues. So even those who think they may not have the effects of it, they will. Because the moment flights are reduced, terminated, movement is reduced, stopped, all these activities that we've been seeing are moved from what we considered normal to what the abnormality now being the normal. Those are disruptions. And those disruptions have a cost. People losing jobs, people not being able to, or taking, look at it globally. This is something that is not something you're telling the world, it's something they know. Because there is no country in the world that has been spared. And the reason why the issue of considering this vaccine for everyone is so that this disruption is actually halted.
Yeah.
And when I say halted, I specifically chose the economic aspect because the economic aspect is what most people who are in business look at when they're making their decision. The human element is tied not just to the hips. It's a Siamese situation with this situation. If you don't take this step, then even the bigger interest that you're looking into will not be what it is. Not might not be, will not be. Yes. That's the argument I'm putting across. And that's why I decided to choose those lovely figures. Yes.
Profit before people.
Yes, in the long run you benefit. You know, we know it and we understand it. When you talk about why do governments focus on educating their people? Why do they focus on eliminating basic diseases? So that you have healthy people. Why? They're productive. And they continue to be productive.
And so profit comes in the long run.
Yes. So in the long run, the very thing that you're pursuing is why is a country like the US so open to professionals? Why are the West open to professionals? The reason is, one, many of them have declining populations. There are more people who are elderly than there are those who are youthful. But it's on the understanding that these people will be productive. It's not an argument that I'm not bringing a new argument. It's an argument that proved itself long before even I pronounced it. It's something that people know. But in this situation, it's like COVID disrupted our lives so much so that even logic somewhere along the line went out of the window.
Disrupted.
Completely disrupted. Yes.
But yeah, the way out of the situation where we are in now, okay, the focus is really on the vaccination for people to get herd immunity so that we have fewer and fewer people contracting the disease. And unfortunately or fortunately, everyone has to be vaccinated. Protecting one and leaving the other is a zero-sum game. So eventually, even as we have a conversation about the nationalism, about certain countries, keeping the vaccine or wanting to populate all their populations first, to vaccinate all their people first, eventually everyone has to be vaccinated if we are to have our global economy back to its feet. Because imagine if the West is fully vaccinated and they still need to do business with Africa, Africa still needs to do business with them, you have to vaccinate Africa here because, everyone has to be protected. So for me, that is the hope. It may not happen in February, but it will happen eventually. And the other good news for me, we've talked about all doom and gloom, is that we may have actually a vaccine coming up soon that is a one-time, one-shot vaccine by Johnson & Johnson, and they're seeking emergency use approval for it. So if we have a one-shot vaccine, then it means we are moving to a place where you just need, if it's 600 million, that can be shared between two countries with a 300 million population, as opposed to now that 600 being a two-step dosage. So there's some hope because people are not just sleeping and waiting that now we have gotten these three candidates. I think they're good. People are still looking for a better solution and hopefully a cheaper solution that would make sense to the low and middle income countries.
Just
and then
thinking
on
about
top of that also, people are also still looking at treatment options because there are people who would ultimately get the disease. And there are reports about, because of the time gap between the first vaccination and the second, they say it may take about 10 days for you to develop full immunity. So within that time, if you contract the virus, what next? So people are still working on a treatment option for COVID. So the good news is that people are not sleeping. And so it will take time for us, maybe by 2022, but we will get there eventually.
Even as you speak about this, I think I realize the need for layered thinking when it comes to all of this. Because if you look at it just on the surface, it would seem, okay, you need a vaccine so that you can protect your people and then you can stop being sick, right? But you said you need a vaccine and you need this treatment to be as smooth as possible so that other things can also happen. There's been hue and cry. Can we get economies back to where they were before and then from there start to rise? Well, you can't do that if you don't have a healthy population, number one. Number two, if the requirements are that investment is going to be flowing because of a lot of traveling, And then you will find that there will be restrictions on countries that have not vaccinated their people. What are we looking at? If you're going to talk about how business needs to pick up once again, and then you have a huge number of the population that it has not been vaccinated, and then the high chance of them continuing to spread this virus, what are you doing then when it comes to investments between countries? So I think there is need for a layered approach to this kind of thinking to say that, well, okay, we're waiting and our hands are out here. No, if you want to continue to lift things up and move away from this, hole that we've been in for so long, then it has to be thinking on that level. And I think hopefully that is what will raise us out of this thing that we've always been in. Our hand is out like this instead of coming to the table and saying, these are the chips that I also have to offer.
This is what we need and this is what we have. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Zachary Nakuru, good morning.
Oh, morning, people.
How are you, Zachary?
I'm okay. You can even hear that I'm in good mood.
Yes.
Good morning.
Being a person from the
Zachary, if I
mountain.
may ask, what would we hear if you're not in a good mood?
Oh, my God. Being a person from the mountain, our moods go with, is proportional to our pockets, yeah? So I'm there to disclose to you that I'm going also to collect another check, yeah?
Last time you played us.
Last year, my friend, you went, you collected, you told us you collected, and then you ate and finished it,
and then
isn't
you cleaned your mouth and then you called us.
And yesterday you were finishing the last bits of it with that porridge, we know.
Now, you are having a good discussion, guys.
Yes.
And let me say, like one of our panelists has said, Mr. Andrew, Mwalimu a.k.a. City Muga, the genius, yeah? Now, I agree with him that even if I were the superpower, I would first of all look at my people, because they are the guys who pay tax, the tax that I'm able to now make me be philanthropic, as he rightly said, yeah? The companies that are manufacturing this drug and the researchers need money. They need bacon on their table. They have got shareholders. And eventually, even when the drug lands, when the vaccine lands here in our African countries, the people who are going to be given the first priority are the essential people, like you people. You are very essential if you don't know. You are going to be vaccinated, like Mwalimu is going to get the first vaccine, yeah? Because of his age, because he is written, yeah?
You have clarified.
Yeah, now, so I totally agree. I totally agree with what Mwalimu is saying, that the companies have got shareholders to answer. It's answerable to shareholders who actually mind about profit, yeah? And therefore, it is, although at a certain point, because like now we've got a new administration in the United States, which went back to the World Organization of Health organization, yeah? We hope eventually things are going to open up, yeah? And everybody should be hopeful. And like Dr. Korir there says, and by the way, regards to her, and Happy New Year to her.
Happy New Year, Zachary.
Yes, thank you. Now, we are also kind of fearing that we are going to have a one-jab vaccine, yeah? That's what happens. That's good news. That's good news, yeah? But Mwalimu should be put in the first place to get that vaccine, yeah? And you are
at the airport.
You have a nice day, guys.
Like as it lands.
Thank you, Zachary. Justus in Kilifi. Hi.
Hi.
Salama kabisa, Justus. How are you?
I guess I should also wish Mercy Happy New Year. She's the one I haven't spoken to this year.
Yes. Happy New Year, Justus.
And you're doing good work, Mercy, because I can hear Ndu beginning to use the medical language, layering of services.
Thinking.
I think layered thinking.
Yes, the influence is
you should say that I'm a good student.
Right?
Yeah, you're a beautiful student.
Thank
now,
you.
I want to be a little optimistic that with regard to the access and financing of the vaccine, ultimately I think it will be possible. Because one of the silent agreements within communities and big pharma is this idea of ensuring that everybody gets the access to that vaccine. And in reality, if the vaccine is about $3 to $7, then in Kenya there's a significant segment of Kenyans who can actually afford it. So so that takes me to the two biggest challenges we'll face: procurement and promotion. I begin with procurement because this is where KEMSA comes in, and the shenanigans of procuring even masks. So if we need to focus on our system on how we are going to get forward and get ahead of the vaccination process, it will begin talking about the capability of KEMSA handling, not just even procuring, but handling and distributing those vaccines when they come, because ultimately they'll come. Is the system prepared? And just as a reminder, when we are talking about this system, we are talking beyond just the information system. We are talking at looking at KEMSA as the core of the supplying of commodities and procurement. Are they prepared? Are they ready? On the other hand, it's about promotion. Promotion means that we have people, as we speak as a country right now, there are people who have never taken a polio vaccine. Why have they not taken it? Yet it's there in the hospital. It's free. And every year we're having there are even other promotions of these vaccines. Why is it? Because some of them are actually confused with rumors, myths about these vaccinations. There are these negative views about vaccination. There are these behavioral issues. There are these social and cultural norms about vaccinating. The rumors about, I don't know whether some of these vaccines are going to cause impotence. We need to begin a communication system which will preempt inevitably the framing of this COVID vaccine and kind of confuse it so that many people may not be able to access it. And then lastly, in regard again with the promotion, is the idea of certain parts of the country as we speak right now don't even take that COVID business seriously. And of this, again, I think I shared a joke with Eric last week that I was in some places across the country where even the mask is a rumor. When you go with a mask, they tell you COVID ni ya kwenu. So if we have such people and we are talking about universal vaccination, we need to begin a robust communication and strategically and effectively designed to ensure that Kenyans understand when and if and when, not if, when we begin the vaccination process, they understand why it's important, they must take it whenever it comes. So just to say, I think the two key things I'm trying to emphasize that we need to focus on our procurement system. Can we handle the commodity and supply side of mass vaccination like that? And I think Dr. Korir can go further on this. But on the other hand, from the community end, are we prepared? Are we prepared the appropriate messaging and the promotion of the vaccination? As far as the financing is concerned, I am kind of optimistic that when they are rolled out, we'll be able to afford them.
We'll get the money.
We'll get the money, and if we can't get, CD can contribute for his extended family, 300. Like that. Eric, you can do the same. I'll do with my grandmothers. Somehow we'll get there. We'll get the affordability, but the procurement, the promotion, those two elements.
Is there a risk, just as you saw when you're going around and you're seeing people who really are not concerned about COVID?
Yes.
Is there a risk of those same people being told come for vaccines and they're like, vaccine ya nini?
Actually, in some part of my village talk is to loudly ask what do they think of COVID. And they say, it's a rumor, kitu ni rumor ya kutukula pesa. It's about eating our money. Now, if you begin from that mindset, then it follows everything else will be a contest, isn't it? Even when if you are already assuming that the COVID thing is a rumor in itself, it's a sham in itself, right? Then whatever message comes afterwards is treated with that lens of a sham.
Yeah.
That's why we need to begin an effective communication process to say this thing is really, irrespective of the scandals we have been associated with it, people are actually dying. And the other risk we have, which is a good risk, is that in some parts of the country, there are some parts, especially when you go to the really, really interior rural areas, there are not many people are sure they have seen somebody with COVID. and for a culture which is very visual. You know, we are very visual. Kenyans like seeing. I'm sure you've been in situations in Nairobi where an accident happened just a block behind your house, and people can't believe it until they see it, actually.
Yep.
So when we have a culture like that, there is a danger in the sense that because people have not seen anybody with COVID, they may not believe it's there. But on the positive side, it may be that they have not seen somebody because COVID has not reached their village, and that's a good thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually,
But
the real, if you look at it just as the thing that we point to COVID is mortality. People die.
Yes,
But even
people
before
die.
they die, people get sick. Unfortunately, people get sick and got sick before COVID. People also died before COVID. So, what is this new thing you're telling them?
Kwani, does it make you blue? I see you die. You see, those are some of the, when you lose a limb, it's a key for two. And then the irony is that, and this is unfortunate, that the mortality has been higher on people with pre-existing conditions, isn't it? So again, people say, we are likufa na diabetes ya sukari. You get it?
Yeah.
So because of this, again, I go back again, we need to invest more, not just on the medics, Dr. Mercy. We need to invest more on communication, the sociologists, the anthropologists, to really design an effective communication mechanism. Because inevitably the vaccine is going to come, isn't it? Because we are not going to be an island of non-vaccination. It's going to come. But the point is, are we prepared from a communication point of view, which are called the promotion arm, and from a procurement perspective?
That's true. Thank you very much, Justus, and have a lovely day in
Thank you. Have a lovely year. You guys are doing an excellent job. Yes.
Asante sana.
Thank you.
20 minutes to 10. 0719-012-600. What are your views on this vaccination, access to vaccine, and also distribution of vaccine? Let's see what's happening on the roads, and then we'll pick your calls. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Living with HIV is not a death sentence. Thanks to advances in medicine, HIV is now a manageable illness, with patients able to lead normal lives and raise families as they achieve their goals and their dreams. Tune in to the Spice Drive with me, Monique, from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. every weekday as we talk about HIV, why it's important to know your status, ways to protect yourself, how you can get tested, and how testing positive should not stop you from living a normal life. Courtesy of the National AIDS Control Council, NACC.
The COVID-19 pandemic is much more than a health crisis. Lost jobs and income, limited access to healthcare and education, and social isolation will have potentially devastating consequences for years to come, especially for women. Transform Kenya will bring together experts to explore the pandemic's toll on women. Panelists will discuss how placing women at the center of recovery efforts, we can build back more prosperous, more prepared, and more equal.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
In some parts of the city, at least for now, except for Mombasa Road, of course. Outbound to see some problems, guys. Thika Road also, we have the inbound traffic at Survey today. It's Mombasa Road and Thika Road that we're having a problem with. Unfortunately, there was an accident near Kappa along Mombasa Road this morning, a bit of a serious one, and that is what has affected traffic and made it a little bit worse. And that was around 8:30, so we're still seeing the effects of that even till now. Okay, so let's hope that as you get on Uhuru Highway and try to get into the CBD, it will not be too bad. It's moving slowly. We're not at a bumper-to-bumper situation just yet, but we'll keep an eye on that through the morning. All right, talk to us as well on Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127, and we hope that it gets better through the day.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
16 minutes to 10. The conversation continues. We okay. While we were on a break, and we were looking at the roads, and then she came back.
From Japan.
From the roads.
Which led to Japan.
Took her to Japan.
Hiya. Okay, so just as was calling them the P's, procurement, promotion, Professor Omwanzala was calling them the V's.
The V's, yeah.
The vaccine, the vaccinators, and the vaccinees. Are we? Is this conversation actually happening in such a way? Can you? The conversation could be happening, but also at the same time, work happening to see that this is going to take place. The one thing that the vaccine and the procurement is the one global issue, but then there's also what can happen, the communication aspect of it. When we talk about now, the vaccine itself and the vaccinators, those that are being vaccinated as well, the vaccinees, knowledge, starting to debunk these myths, starting to tell people, if people don't believe that there is COVID, how do you convince them to go and get a vaccine for this thing that they don't believe exists? So there's a big risk here of vaccine is here, but people are like,
but there's also
hiyo shindano mnataka alafu
but there's also the
mnatulipisha,
aspect,
and then you
there's
tell me
also-
that you pay 300
yes.
bob.
Exactly. Now
770.
770.
There's also the aspect of denying the existence of something as a protective measure. If I deny it, then it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, then it doesn't bother me. Interesting logic, usually faulty, but it is something that works. Why am I going to be bothered with something which immediately I can see relates to an expense? And I have difficulties simply surviving on a day-to-day basis. Why? Last thing on my mind.
True.
Push it aside.
On the other hand, anyway, the denial, not the denial, the fear of contracting a disease that has affected many people might actually motivate people to get a vaccine. Because you could think, if the vaccine is going to prevent me from getting this thing, even if it's not there and it's going to prevent me, why not?
Yeah.
So the fear of it might drive people to get the vaccine.
Not really. And Mercy, not really. Unless people get to understand it. Let me tell you why I'm interrupting you and saying not really around 3 times. It's because...
My sentence is still hanging.
Okay, please, I apologize. Let me... I will carry on with what I was saying after you finish.
Let yours hang first.
In fact, I will stop it, halt it, not even hang. Stop.
So I was going to go to the part where City was asking the government, how can we help you? And how we can help them is by being a communications channel to explain some of these things, to debunk some of the myths, misconceptions, theories, everything around the vaccinations, revisit the disease again, what we have learned within the 1 year of the disease, which has been a lot. And maybe that will change people's perceptions and understanding of the disease. Those who are in fear may understand why they need to get the vaccine. Those who are in denial may be, converted to understand. And, because here you want to rally as many people as possible to get the vaccine.
That's very true. You know what that's required, Mercy? That coordination from the government. It's the same way you said, look at the formation, at the establishment of the National Emergency Response Committee. And that was the one that is coordinating everything else that happens onto the ground. The same communication, use all available media, all of them, but the messaging has to be uniform. Otherwise, us guys will be saying one thing here today, the other station is saying something different, and the translation of that completely different, so it doesn't work.
There'll be many theories around everything.
About yes.
Yeah, and the way there's a lot of information coming out about the vaccine, how people are reacting, some of the side effects maybe that some people are experiencing. There's a lot that is happening, which we probably need to get into the same mode and the same conversation space that we were when we were discussing COVID-19 as something we don't know. So it's the same thing that we need to start with the vaccination. But the buck stops with the head of the National Response Committee.
Yeah. City.
You know, first of all, I apologize for interrupting you. Because had I waited, then I wouldn't have needed to speak, because you'd have spoken my thoughts. But now that you've spoken, you've added more to what I had wanted to say originally. You see, when you tell people to get vaccinated, even if it's free, and it's supposed to prevent them from getting sick, the thing you must understand is the balancing act that any individual in this country, especially now, given that the economic and social disruption that COVID has caused, you're asking this person to prioritize the vaccination amidst other things that they already have and which they deal with on a daily basis. Because getting vaccinated, it doesn't mean they're coming to your doorstep to vaccinate you. You have to take yourself. Even if it's near a center, there are people who will have to travel. Something as basic as travel. And not everyone is able to travel, even if it's near and you can walk.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying you've introduced something that joins the queue of things that they need to be dealing with on a daily basis. So unless, and this is where now Eric's point comes in, so unless there's a concerted effort to ensure that all the things that may run interference with this process are dealt with, you will have that particular process, but the likelihood of it actually working will be next to zero.
That's true.
And you've mentioned travel and travel movement, and I've just quickly thought the kind of people that you're targeting, the elderly, people with pre-existing conditions. Some people can't even get out of their house to bask
No,
at the
they're
sun.
being facilitated to be taken out, sort of like bask in the sun.
So how are
And
they
they're the
going-
ones who need this vaccine.
And they're the ones who need that vaccine.
Also, remember, one of the biggest challenges that COVID, the information around COVID has faced in this country is money. First, there was, oh, these guys want money. Second, there was, but why are we paying? It's too expensive. Now, if you bring vaccine with money alongside it, that also is going to be a big, big pushback.
We shouldn't
Telling
even-
somebody at 700, so 700 bob just to access the vaccine, and then now there's a transport cost. And if you're talking about somebody who is elderly who requires to be supported, you're talking about transport for more than one person. Aha.
And I don't think we should even encourage or entertain
The thought
of having a cost on that vaccine. None at all. Because once we start this conversation like this, somebody may have an idea we should, charge Kenyans. There should not be any charge whatsoever, because that will be counterproductive. Because all of these things will come. I mean, if I have 1,000 bob, and that's the money between me and poverty this week, or me and hunger this week, am I going to vaccinate one person in my house, or budget for food for the entire week?
And these people are well. They're not sick.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be preventative. We've had cases. We even had a gentleman who called in once, and he told us that he was a security person. And a sick child. Was it? Or the child had died. I can't remember which was.
Child was sick, child died.
Died, yes. But he wasn't getting involved in those preparations. You know why? He said, I have to go and work. Because if I don't work and earn a living, then...
Even the burying of this child will not be done.
Yes, it's something basic. And it's a reality. It's become an even more pointed reality with COVID. Because that rank of people who probably don't even have jobs has increased, which means the rank of people who don't have money has increased. So you're now telling them to take this time when they would have otherwise looked for gainful employment
to go and queue.
They're not going to queue.
They won't.
They're not going to queue.
And then go and pay.
And they're well. Remember, they're not sick. Even when people are sick, they postpone it. They figure, no. Just take one of these painkillers.
Or when it gets worse.
Well, yes. So, against that backdrop of the reality of how we deal with our diseases and how we handle illnesses, even if it is free, even if it is nearby, that is not a guarantee that you'll have the number of people. No.
You may not get 100%.
You know those community health workers and some healthcare workers who go from estate to estate with that loudspeaker telling people, we are vaccinating for polio.
Yep.
That is what we need.
Yep. And let them come door to door, just
yeah,
like
door
they do
to
with polio.
You map
polio
out.
vaccination. Come. No.
They go to
you know it can actually be done.
Yeah,
It's been
We've
done.
been doing
It's
it for
been
polio.
done.
This is how we
It's
do
been
it.
doing for
Even
polio.
People come around to
Yeah.
the estates to
This is how we do
a pair
vaccinations
of
in
health
Kenya.
workers coming
Yeah.
around vaccinating your children. It's not as if we're talking
With a
about
cool
something that
box.
has never been done before. It's been done. And you know what? Not just in Nairobi, the entire
Countrywide.
Country.
I look at examples of how it's done in Nigeria. It was done in Nigeria with a population of 200 million people. Until today, that country is free of that particular disease because of vaccinations that took place. It is possible. It can happen. It's been done. The same mechanisms that have been used to do that for polio can be employed to do that for here.
You know, if you were to go to the Ministry of Health, you'd find that there are many people who deal with these things who actually understand and know what to do.
Yep.
And they'll even put forward, this is what we do. And by the way, they'll be spot on. Then comes our eternal disease.
It goes up there.
Doing it.
It goes up there, and then the political conversation is made alongside a commercial conversation.
That's it.
Bas.
That's
Bas.
You know, that's
There's
the
a
end of
comment
it.
from Becky Kim who says, just like clockwork, 3 weeks into the opening of schools, and there's a throat infection going around. Hospitals are seeing more kids, and zinc is being prescribed to, no matter the ailment. Have you heard of this?
Which schools? And where's the zinc being prescribed?
I've not heard of this. I'll have to
Says-
investigate and look.
Yep. This.
But zinc is not entirely a bad thing for children, like especially children with diarrhea, because it kind of replenishes your lining. So it's not entirely a bad thing to have zinc.
With this throat infection going around, all these things will always be linked to one or the other.
We'll check. We'll check and find out.
Don't worry, Becky. The group editor in charge of health and science will look into this. Yes. Just activate 2 or 3 phone calls around the country and we'll get it. Itakuja. So, as we conclude the conversation, as we look forward into the next coming weeks and months, looking at what Kemri has said, expect now that with kids going and the clusters and the mixing of clusters, then if there's going to be a spread, it's going to be peaking around end February, early to mid-March. How do
And
we
plus, it's getting cold,
It's expected.
And then, it's going to be the long-range season.
No, it's expected, really, that the numbers would go up. I mean, we've talked about the issue of crowding. I've talked about the issue of, being in an enclosed space, people interacting or coming into contact with each other.
Yep.
Those 3 C's, when you look at schools, they tick all of them. So it will not be a surprise that the numbers increase. May not necessarily be with the children, but the adults that are interacting with the children, and then they interact with other people, and then you have all the transport from kids from school to home. So you expect that the numbers would go up. So for me, it is not a surprise. And now that we've seen from the projections that we expect that, the question should be, what are we doing, or what will we do to mitigate this? Are we going to close schools? Maybe not. Are we going to institute
Will
quarantine,
healthcare,
isolation? What are we going to do?
be ready?
Yeah. So that is the conversation that we should have, because we'll not have the vaccine by then, or even if we have the vaccine by then, not everyone will have been vaccinated. So it's about what do we do next after that. And the beauty is we've had a 1-year experience to know what to do and what not to do.
True.
So hopefully we learned a thing or two.
All right, CT, today's proverb.
A diviner cannot accurately divine his own future. Now, here I'm not talking about someone whose profession is divine or someone whose profession is divination. No. Let's expand it. People who are always in the business of telling you what will happen and what they will do are politicians. If only they could divine whether the people will vote for them in the next election. If only they could divine if by changing parties, their political fortunes would rise. If only they could divine that by saying the things that they say, they would actually get to the promised land of being popular and attain the seats that they want.
So a politician is not in control of their destiny?
No, they think they are. Usually, they think they are, and they forget that the office that they seek is actually given to them. And anything that is given to you can actually be taken.
Can be taken.
Because it wasn't even yours to begin with, it was given to you.
Yes. Thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room. Mercy, thank you very much for joining us again today.
Thank you. As always, it's a pleasure to be here.
Lovely.
It's a good way to spend the morning.
Unasikiaje? Unasikiaje?
You don't want
So
people to
make
rest
this your
today.
best way to spend your morning. Tomorrow morning at from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. One will be back here. CT Muga, Nduoko, Eric Latif, and Dr. Mercy Korir. Have a lovely day, folks. Now until 3 o'clock, here's uninterrupted music, and then Monique will be here to take you home on Spice Drive, and then adults in the room. Yesterday they had Jen Spy.
Jane
Jane Bond.
Jane Bond. Who's it gonna be today?